I would say we live like assholes.
Okay.
And I say that, Caleb's cracking up. But like, I mean, I'm just being real, because like at some point, I'm like, I just said it, like these are the 4 things you can spend money on. Like what else are you going to spend? Like, and so it's, like we go out to eat, we probably spend $12,000 a month on food.
We're here with Alex Hormozi, who is a highly requested guest. I don't know if you saw on the Graham Stephan pod that you recently did. I made a comment just because I was interested in watching, and then it got upvoted to the top, and everyone was like, "Make it happen, make it happen." So, yeah.
Oh, sweet. No, I didn't know. That was a fun pod. Those are good guys.
No, yeah, I like the fact that it was, they really got into more of your, I don't know, vision of, I don't know, like worldviews and kind of things that were above and beyond like general surface level entrepreneurial advice and stuff. It was like really, really insightful. And I think a lot of people definitely resonated with it a lot.
Well, I appreciate it. After I got out of there, I actually got in the car with Layla and I was like, I don't know if I should have that stuff. You know what I mean? Like they just asked it and I was like, well, here's what I think, and honestly, the response was, I would say, overwhelmingly positive. Most people were like, dude, I feel the same way, and I feel like you put words to it, or you know what I mean, things like that. Of course, I had plenty of people who were like, you're going to go to hell and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah. So I don't know how many people have seen your stuff already to kind of, already have an idea of who you are, what you're about and stuff. And I don't want to get too in the weeds on your entire upbringing to acquisition.com, because that could be a whole pod in itself. I know you've talked about it multiple times. So as far as like what I found from your channel, like how people might, why I align with your content so much, like I found you to be, Alex is one of the only channels that has like experience in the trenches and actually documents practical advice that got him from 0 to 100 million in annual revenue. I don't know if that number is like, big or whatever, but just in general, like he's a very accomplished entrepreneur, and I find a lot of his content very applicable to my situation. And it's unique in that it's not like there's any secrets held back where you have to jump into like a master class or something to kind of like find out the real answers to things. You just like lay it all out there, and it's very unique entrepreneurial content. So I've found it extremely valuable myself, and I feel like a lot of you guys might find interest in some of the stuff he talks about too, from entrepreneurship, worldviews, bodybuilding stuff, which you haven't really touched on a whole lot in these podcasts. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. No, not at all.
Yeah. Not at all, man. I haven't. As you can imagine, it was by design. I mean, I had a chain of gyms first, and so everything I had was about fitness. And then the day I started my gym was the day I realized that I liked I liked business more than I liked fitness. Mm-hmm. And so fitness became my second love the day that I started my business. And so that was definitely a significant switch. But then once I went full into like talking about gym business, which was Gym Launch, and that started like 2016, I pretty much stopped talking about fitness altogether, because I didn't want to be like I didn't want to be a fitness dude. I wanted to be a business guy. And then to the same degree, I already look the way I look. And so, I'm sure you deal with the same thing, but I didn't want to get, snap judgments are how people navigate the world, so I can understand that. And so everything I could do to try and not emphasize that is what I've done up to this point. Caleb and I have had some conversations about whether I will, maybe show like 5% of the fitness stuff, because it is a part of my life. But I just haven't spoken about it much.
So like, obviously Gym Launch, hugely aligned with the fitness, industry and whatnot, but more of like, I don't even know if people realize what goes into like getting people in the doors of gyms, or how these gyms are scaling, and like how you've kind of like built this infrastructure of not necessarily like having your own gyms, but you found a way to not only take your experience in gyms yourself, but then transition it to helping gyms scale and bring in a shitload of customers. And just like that process and how you built up the companies from scratch, could you just give like a sweeping overview of like when you started, you built this company, and this company, your recent exit, and like where you're at now with acquisition.com.
Yeah, I'll give the business highlight reel.
Yeah.
So I started one gym, Southern California. It was in Huntington Beach. That was my first gym. Slept on the floor, figured it out. At month 15, I opened my second location. Opened up 3 more after that in Southern California. 2 of those were corporate locations that were actually merged into Yamaha. So we actually did a corporate contract with them, which is actually a pretty profitable deal for us. Ended up selling all 5 of them to different people. So I sold I sold 3 to a partner, 1 to a competitor, and 1 to a client. So I had an asset sale, an LLC sale. I had an all cash deal that was financed. I had a seller finance deal. So I had like every type of deal. And it's funny because in retrospect, I'm like, wow, that was actually an amazing experience. But at the time I was like, why can't these all just be clean? So anyways, I had those 5, opened up a location on the East Coast because I thought I was going to do this kind of launch and go model, and ended up not being a good idea. And then I went back to doing what we were doing, which is doing turnarounds. So we kind of would fly out, fill a gym up in 30 days, go to the next one. We did that for about 2 years. We did 30 something gyms. I think it was like 32 turnarounds. And then we had the brilliant idea, or I failed my way into, maybe we should just show people what we're doing rather than physically flying out to their locations and doing all this work. And so we switched to licensing, and that's when everything really blew up. And so that was really Jim launched the licensing business, which is like I'd be like, here's the ads, here's the copy, here's the videos, here's the pages, here's the headlines, here's where you put your stuff in. This is the follow-up sequence to get them to show up. This is how you set up your lobby. This is the script. Here's white labeled versions of our meal plans, our grocery list, our food preparation instructions, eating out guides, blah, blah, blah. Put your logo on all that stuff. And then once you sell them, here's the script for the halfway sale, here's the script for the supplement sale, you know what I mean? And then here's how you convert them into memberships. This is the price point you should do it at. Here's how you discount it, like all that stuff. So we just handed that system over, and it exploded. You know what I mean? I think we did 26 million in our first full 12 months of business, which is pretty nuts from a growth. And that was like, I mean, it was nuts. I have no, it was I don't. It's funny because like the further I get from it, the more I don't take credit for it, because I think there was a confluence of events that happened together, unbeknownst to me behind the scenes, that ended up creating an outsized return. And so that's when Gym Launch blew up. 2 years after that, I started Prestige Labs, which was a supplement company. At that point, I think we had a few thousand locations that were licensing our business model, and so we sold through that distribution base. So basically, if a gym has 20 people who come in per month to sign up for memberships or trials or challenges or whatever, we just say, hey, after you sell them the service, just sell them supplements, right? And so if you have 1,000 people selling 20, it's 20,000 customers, and that's how that business grew pretty quickly. And then we started Allen, which is a lead working software, because the next constraint that most of them had was that they wouldn't work the leads that they would get. And so I saw where messaging was going, where machine learning was going, and I was like, I bet you we could automate a big portion of this. And so we were able to do that and get twice as many people in the door compared to the average front desk person for about 1/5 of the price. So they were like, awesome. And so we grew Allen. And then all in 2021, we exited all 3 companies. We exited the software company in, I think, June. And we did that to a strategic partner. That was an all stock deal. And the other deal was all cash deal, which was Prestige and Gym Launch we sold as a bundle to APG, which is American Pacific Group out of San Francisco.
So the Allen automation, like not working on leads, how do you use the software to automate that process or to maximize the leads, so to speak? Is there like automated Facebook return messages, or what is it exactly?
Yeah, so there's a lot of so we really lucked out because we got the guy who won the machine learning contest out of Russia. So there's Google in Russia. It's not Google. It's like their version of Google, and they hold this like machine learning contest every year for coding. And we got the guy who won it. Really, really bright guy. So English, but super bright. Yeah. And so he basically just applied machine learning to every component of the funnel from click to show. And so there's lots of things that you're able to figure out where it would be better to get 100% of people scheduled and have 50% of them show than it would be to get 90% of people to show and only get 30% scheduled, because your throughput there would be 27% versus 50, right? And so, we started looking at the total throughput of a marketing campaign from click to show And we found out some pretty interesting stuff. And so I would say like 2/3 of it came from optimizing kind of best practices that we were able to discover, which is like the more hours per day you're available, the more shows you get, which sounds silly, but people don't do it. The sweet spot on throughput is having 30-minute time slots. Even if it's an hour-long session, having the ability to choose on 30-minute time slots gave you more. We actually thought it was 15 and we would get more people booked, but then they would overlap, so there'd be more gaps. So we'd actually have fewer people able to show up because of the inefficiencies in scheduling. So having it on a perfect 30-minute cadence allowed us people to have more. So ideally you'd have as many time slots, 30 minutes a day. It could be hour, it could be whatever. And you'd want it to be 7 days a week, ideally. And just as a side note, like with one of our companies, we actually all we did was change the way they were scheduling and we increased sales by 50%.
Wow.
And so it's just 100 golden BBs that you apply to a business to make it grow. And so we're really fortunate that we had that with Alan. But yeah, with the sequences is, what's the intonation of the messages? What's the cadence that we do? How quickly do we respond? How many times do we message somebody before they show up? Are videos better? Are images better? Should we keep it pure text? Should we send a map link? And how many is the right amount? How many is the right amount before you bug the shit out of somebody and they don't show up? And so it was really just testing all those different variables and just using data to tell the story and then just optimizing towards it.
And in hindsight, you're glad you did the software company, or was it like a huge fucking hassle?
Okay, I am incredibly grateful that I did it for how much I learned, because I apply everything we learned in the software companies to every other company that we use. Because I would say I didn't understand customer success and the quant side behind success and LTV and things like that until we got into the software game. But in terms of my reward on that business is delayed, because it really depends on how the strategic rolls it into their company, and that's going to be delayed for another 5 years. So, I mean, in terms of when I see the fruit of that, they had 4,000 businesses on their platform. We had, I think, like 500. So, they're just plugging that into all of their whole distribution network.
So as far as where you go after that, you sold the companies and then you started acquisition.com, which is your essentially like big mega corp that's going to hold a portfolio of minority stakes in other companies that have, startups or whatever that have 3 million a year or more in annual revenue up to a certain limit, and you try and grow them from 3 to 50 or 100, or like what is the general range again? And by the way, acquisition.com, is it a C-Corp and it holds LLCs?
No, it's an LLC, actually. But we have gone, I'm actually looking at, anyways, not to get into legal jargon, but it is currently an LLC, and it holds LLCs. I think we have a couple S-Corps, but it does have interest in LLCs, or that's the way it's structured right now. So deal size, the smallest companies we'll take on is doing $250,000 a month. The biggest company we have right now, yesterday did 320,000. So like there's a range, you know what I mean, in terms of size of company. So we take them, I would say where we feel very comfortable is going from like 3 to 50. That feels very good to us. Going beyond that, the entire portfolio does over that amount. And I told you that company specifically, but they're not doing 300,000 every day. They're probably closer to 200 a day right now. And so, that's like a $6 million a month company. I don't know even, what is that, 72? Whatever, yeah. So, so we feel good in that range, which I would consider low mid-market.
Okay, and is there like a net profit target you shoot for too when it comes to, like, I know in general you talk about 3 million annual revenue is like your minimum, if you're under that, it's kind of like, that's the ideal minimum scenario. But net profit, like I know these are e-learning companies, so the margin, I'm assuming, is a lot higher. So is there like a target you shoot for in general?
Yeah, the minimum, so it's 3 million with $1 million in profit is kind of like the minimum that we start with. But like, I'm less picky on how much margin they have coming in, because we know what we're going to do to move it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'd rather have all the other things in place so that they have the potential. At the end of the day, we're looking for an entrepreneur who's who's got unimpeachable character, sincere candor, and competitive greatness. We want to see a marketplace where we see the potential to provide lots of value to, and we want to see depth of experience in their ability to fulfill on those promises. And so a lot of times people are, when I see somebody who's like, hey, here's how I made 10K a month with an agency thing, and they never scaled their agency past 10K a month, there's very limited value that they're going to be able to provide to the avatar because they never really did it. And I think a big part of why Gym Launch was so successful is that we always knew what the next 10 steps were, because we didn't, and if you've ever had this from a mentor perspective, I used to think, I had heard when I was coming up that you should have somebody who's only 1 or 2 steps ahead of you because it's been more recent for them, blah, blah, blah. But I would say the more I've had some weather, or some time under the belt, the more I prefer to have people who are a few steps further ahead, because if you take 2 steps ahead and then you realize that you have to take 10 steps backwards because you did everything wrong, that sucks. And I think that that's a lot of the advice that's given out there today, which is why I made the YouTube channel to begin with. So we look for the depth of experience so that we can figure out a way to have to create a premium brand that can command higher profits or prices and then translate to higher profits. But to answer the original question, which is what kind of profit we're looking for the companies or what we think we can get to, I would say the most profitable company we have right now is about 60% net margins.
Jesus.
I would say usually we target around 40.
So when these companies are in growth mode though too, if they're all LLCs with flow through taxation structures and they have 60% net margin or 30%, does that mean that you and Layla just take that hit personally because it flows right up to you and you're I don't know how much active distributions you take from them as they're growing. Presumably, I don't know if is it just enough to offset your tax burden or how does that play in? Because I'm thinking you have no active income from cash cow companies like a Gym Launch anymore. So now I have these LLCs under me all siphoning up net profit that I'm responsible for, but no other income other than my,
Yeah. So these businesses are much more the Berkshire Hathaway businesses. They are cash cows, and we optimize for net free cash flow.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want to grow the companies, but because of the nature of the companies that we choose or that we work with, there's virtually no capex. So there's no capital expenses that we have to reinvest to grow the businesses. So we don't have to buy new inventory. We don't have to buy new machinery. We don't have to buy really anything. The only thing that we have to spend more money on is talent. But anything that's in this type of business, the talent is getting amplified by the fact that they have some sort of digital products or services or tech-enabled services that enable us to get 10 times more for that person anyway. So anytime we're adding somebody, we're getting 10 times the return to begin with and to start with. So they can cash flow as they grow very well.
Okay, so is there do you take distributions at the early stage to offset your tax burden essentially and just...
We take distributions like owners would.
Okay, cool. And as far as I know you've mentioned you take on e-learning companies preferably because that's kind of your bread and butter. For me, prior to seeing Gym Launch, my experience of seeing e-learning was stuff like Alex Becker, how to make money online, stuff like that. And, those big master classes of how to start a Shopify store or whatever. That was my concept of e-learning modern. And then I also saw some of those I don't know, I think there's masterclass.com where they have some expert teach you how to play the fucking piano or whatever they're an expert at. What do you guys... I've heard you mention hair salon as an example, how to scale a hair salon, I feel like.
Dentist, chiropractor,
Was it sort of just spinning Gym Launch into each different type of business, essentially, or
So I would say that there's 3, I've never actually talked about this, so this is fun. So I would say there's 3 subcategories within education. So you've got education for a specific skill, that would be violin or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I would say there's mass market education around business or income generating skills. So I would say non-income skills, which would be a B2C consumer education thing. And then there's I would say B2B2C, which is kind of biz op, how to make money doing something. And then there's, I would say, kind of niche down expertise, which are more improvement offers. So it's, you already are a wholesaler. You already are a auto mechanic. You already are a hairstylist. You already are a massage therapist, whatever it is. And if you just do these 22 things, you can make 5 times more money, right? And there are advantages and disadvantages to each of those. We have all 3 of those types within the portfolio. I think that a lot of reason that the space, so right now the space is getting more, I would say, institutional attention. I mean, it's super young still, because they are seeing the tremendous amount of cash flow and scale that these companies are achieving, it's still wild, wild west. It's still early days. And I think that, the demand for skills is not going anywhere. And I think as formal education has failed many people in their desire to, have skills that can equip them to make money, these things aren't going away. And so our bet is on the fact that the players who are the best at their specific skills in terms of teaching and the monetization model that they wrap around it are going to be, I think it is a winner-take-all model, which is if you are the best math teacher should teach math to everyone. And with technology, they can. And so that's kind of how we're structuring what we're making our bets on.
So like hypothetically, if I'm a hair salon or something and I'm looking to like teach people how to scale their business, I assume if I'm looking for a business, for example, locally, I'm probably still gonna go to Google and be like, sushi place near me or hair salon near me. Like, do you stay up to date on like Google algorithm changes yourself? So then when you come in, you can be like, these are the current SEO strategies, or this is the gray hat tactics that you want to be aware of. Like how do you kind of like finagle that? Because obviously you probably don't have the time to stay on top of that shit too.
Yeah.
So
no, of course not. No, I don't have that. And so I'll kind of walk through the process. So if we're taking a company on who's at 3 million, usually they have some level of product market fit, which is why 3 million is the cutoff. Like if they're below 3 million, like they're still kind of figuring their stuff out. They still don't even have a core team yet. So usually at 3 million, 250 a month, you're doing, you got a core team of like 10 to 20-ish people. You have a consistent acquisition channel. It might not be as high as you want, but it's consistent. It's reliable, right? You're getting customers, month in, month out, right? And so usually at that point, this is where I think a lot of people at that level will make the mistake of saying, oh, I need to just do more marketing. And that's usually not the answer. Usually they need to increase their lifetime value per customer. So we need to, stop losing people in the back end, get the customer experience where it needs to be, make sure that we're tracking the right metrics, get, customer segmentation in place so we can match, the product suite to the desires of the customer and make sure that we're selling the right things to the right people. And so we, pair all that things in. We might have to add some element of recurring to the business. We might peel off things that are consumption versus, continuous, and then price accordingly to that. And so we'll do those things first. And a lot of times we need to hire a handful of people who have experience in those arenas and then put them into the business, right? And this is a big part of formalizing it. And so that alone, without even increasing acquisition, will usually do the first triple. So most times we can triple the first business without even doing anything to the acquisition. The second triple, and we think in triple. So it's like first triple is typically going to be the back end. The second triple will be adding channels of acquisition. And so now at this point, because we have fixed the back end, we have significantly more gross profit per customer that allows us to go to these other channels far more profitably and acquire customers. And so we have more room to make mistakes. We have cash flow to fund the growth, all that kind of stuff. And so if we were helping hair salons, I'm not going to help hair salons. I'm taking somebody who already is the expert in that. So they're up to date on the Google, blah, 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 the map stack and, the best referral strategies and how to partner with, chiropractors to send you hair clients and, paid ads and whatever, right?
So is this the sort of thing where you would have, like if you had Facebook ads, whatever it is of your acquisition channel, you're trying to drive them into like a click funnel where you then teach them how to scale their business via expert? That's at the top with like that's the whatever business you have is like the gym launch, but for like I'm just trying to make sure I understand completely. Like
yeah. So with this hairstylist example, right? So if there's a hairstylist who, let's say her name's Sarah and she's making $4,000 a month and that's her life, right? And so she sees an ad for Tammy who's making $20,000 a month cutting hair too, and she's like, well, hot darn, I'd like to make $20,000 a month instead of $4,000. And so, she clicks the thing, she watches a video that's like, okay, it's because they're doing way more, extensions and colors than they are cuts because that's more profitable per hour. That makes sense, but how do I sell that stuff? Well, you can schedule a call and they can walk you through it. Cool, okay, so she schedules a call, walks through it. She says, you know what, it makes sense for me to spend $5,000, which is 1 month, to get to $20,000 every month. The exchange makes sense, cool. So then they would walk her through the strategy, which is like, okay, from here on out, here's how you schedule your time slots. Here's the scripts that you use to get new customers. When you make your Instagram post, this is how you do it. When you set up your Max Step, this is how you do it. When you get your referrals, here's the referral script. Here's, you know what I mean? And so you go through all these things, and then piece by piece, they implement each of those kind of golden BBs into the business, and then the business incrementally grows.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand. So it's basically taking existing experts in their space who are trying to teach, but teaching them how to scale their teaching, essentially.
Correct. It's an education. We're an education company.
Okay. So it's almost similar to like the Alex Becker of like every random niche of, hair salon, whatever niche it is. Okay. Got it. So I can see how that would be like exceptionally profitable. I've considered that model before back in the day when I was trying to look at ways to make money, but like, I don't know, have you ever considered that yourself, doing master classes on entrepreneurship, or is that just like...
Well, I have a YouTube channel. That's my master class, and I don't need to charge for it.
Yeah, that was why I identified with your stuff so much, is because it was the first time I've seen somebody not try to push you into one of those things. It was just like, here's all the fucking info, take from that what you will, sort of thing. So, yeah, it's awesome, dude. Yeah, really. So like, as far as when you first come in and find holes to fill, and like you specifically, what do you have, like a meeting every week with each company or portfolio, or like how do you allocate your time to filling those holes?
Well, we have a team, so it's not just us. So we get people from Harvard Business School and private equity groups who are growing portfolio companies, and we bring them in. So they already have tons of trench experience from what they're doing beforehand. So one of our big things is we try and hire people who've already won an Olympic gold, not who say they can win an Olympic gold. So we want you to, who have already won a gold medal, and just say, cool, just run that race here. And so then they just can recreate the things that they already know. Now, we already have our playbooks too for specifically this size of company. And so the nice thing is that a lot of businesses often have, especially because we're so specific in the types of business that we work with, they have the same problems at the same points. And so, just creating the paint by numbers or the money by numbers playbooks for like, okay, here's how we remove the founder from the marketing. Here's how we set up the customer segmentation surveys. Here's how we, create the creative cadence for organic. Here's the creative cadence for paid ads. Here's how we pick our messaging buckets on the marketing perspective. Here's how we do compliance, so we can actually make sure that we're not being scammy weirdos, right? And that would just be like marketing, for example. And same thing with sales. It's like, all right, here's our speed to contact. This is how we track, utilization per rep. This is how we do our call reviews. This is what our monthly cadence needs to be for the sales director. This is how these are the ads the sales director needs to run to get the best sales guys. This is the interview cadence. Like it's just business. It's just like, this is how you build it, And so in terms of how we allocate it, we look at the whole business and we say, just where's the biggest lever here? Because all those things need to get done between now and 100. But which of those things need to be done first? And so a lot of times we only pick 3 big rocks that we're going to focus on, and that'll probably be the first year in making sure that we truly execute those good things. Because a lot of times, if you think about probably even your business or your businesses, you're like, if I just did one of these things for this business by the end of the year, we'd triple. And so it's really being ruthless in our prioritization and just keeping the founders and the leadership teams focused on that one priority. Because if you get that right, you can usually mess up a ton of other stuff and still turn out okay.
Right. So like, obviously you have a lot of people on your team who you've vetted and had headhunted or whatever it is, who are capable 100%. Of fulfilling these things on your behalf. So where you plug in yourself, obviously right now, a big ROI on your time is building social presence to then establish, the perspective that you're the guy to go to grow these 3 to whatever $1 million companies to the next level. As far as how you plug in directly with the portfolio companies, though, if you have this team under you that is able to facilitate, are you oftentimes trying to find more people that are of that same caliber of your team, and you're like interviewing people yourself, or how do you plug in with the portfolio companies exactly?
It's a combination. It's what constraint are the majority of them dealing with that if for some reason we cannot handle, which most times we can, but we might say, okay, Layla and I are spending a lot of time on this particular thing. So I think we need somebody who's going to handle this particular slice, right? And so, the benefit, so most businesses go from generalist to specialist over time, right? So it's harder to find the jack of all trades in the beginning, which is usually why the owner does a lot of that in the beginning. And then over time, we replace the headhunting function, which is something that, we replace. If we replace the consecration function, we replace the sales directing function, like all of these, all these pieces. And then in terms of how we interface with them directly, they very much are treated the same way the companies that I owned before selling are treated, which is we treat them like we own them.
Quick side tangent to bring you a note from one of our sponsors. What am I saying? Side tangent.
interruption. What am I saying? I don't know. This is Seed, Daily Synbiotic. This is what I use on a daily basis as my gut support supplement, essentially. So for me, I had been spending a bunch of money on iHerb, Amazon, buying a bunch of different formulas, strains, random stuff, and kind of just, taking shots in the dark. Frankly, don't really understand the gut microbiome. It's an area of research that heavily interests me, but I just don't understand it very much. So I try to educate myself by watching podcasts, science-based creators, actual like people in the trenches who do this stuff and like look into the gut microbiome, the gut-brain axis interactions, and try and learn more about it. And it seemed like this formula was the one that had the most reinforcing data behind from a human evidence perspective, had the most people I respected in the industry talking about it and actually saying that they used it. And this included people who weren't just sponsored by the product too, people who actually had digestive issues that were using it, people who had Crohn's, for example, that were looking for any kind of support they could get of their gut. So for me, that was enough to kind of get on board and put my own money down and see, what it's all about. Fortunately, since then, they've actually sponsored the channel, which is super cool. Anytime there's an alignment like that, I get super thrilled about it. And obviously, if you guys are looking to optimize yourselves, in the same way I am, I'm always trying to eke out extra performance from a mental clarity standpoint, from a digestive health standpoint, whatever it is, especially time efficiency standpoint too. So this is something I use as a reinforcement essentially of my digestive health, gut barrier integrity, gut immune function. Apparently has interactions with cardiovascular health, dermatological health as well, and micronutrient synthesis, which is obviously, of high interest to a lot of individuals here. So for me, again, this is my insurance policy of sorts for my gut. And if you want to support me, you can check it out too. It's linked in the description below, and you can save 15% off your first month's supply of Seed's DS01 Daily Synbiotic by using code Derek at checkout. Thank you to Seed for sponsoring today's video, and back to our regularly scheduled programming.
So, I do everything that I would do for a gym launch. I do everything that I would have done for Prestige Labs while being the owner, which means that I'm not going to write ad copy because it's not a good use of anyone's time. Because if I write the ad copy, the business is dependent on me, right? But if I can usually help make or guide strategic decisions, then it absolutely is worth the time. And so for us, we review all the company's data monthly, which is exactly what we do when we own all the companies. We review the data monthly in terms of their financials. We are interacting with them usually on a daily or semi-daily basis from a messaging back and forth perspective. We have open office hours all the time during the week so that we can hop on to solve specific issues for the portfolio companies. And at the end of the day, we just make ourselves available. As much as it appears that I am extremely active on social, a big part of that is because Caleb and the team make me look a lot cooler than I am. And so the vast majority of my time, I would say, conservatively 80, realistically 90% of my time is spent growing the portfolio companies. Because they grow, I make more money. So it's I don't need more companies. Zuckerberg didn't need a side hustle. You know what I mean? I can just get a handful of companies that are really good, and that's the Berkshire Hathaway way. It's just find really good companies and let them grow.
So how many do you have at this point under acquisition.com, and then how many hours
8.
do you spend on each one kind of per day?
We spend 8, and then per day it varies dramatically by what season the business is in.
And do you have a consolidated communication medium? At this point, I have so many fucking threads, dude. There's a Slack, there's an Upwork, there's group threads, there's text, there's Signal, there's WhatsApp, and I'm holy goddamn shit, dude.
Yeah. So everyone plays our play our way, and that's part of coming onto acquisition.com. So everyone uses our tech stack for CRM because it pipes into our tech stack, so we can see the data and it gets pushed in real time. So we don't waste all this time aggregating, cleaning data, which is a pain in the butt. So that's a huge one that's streamlined right off the bat. The second thing is from a communication standpoint, everyone's on Slack. And so that's it. Everyone's on Slack. That's the way it works in terms of communication. So in terms of systems, we only use 3. We use Zoom, we use Slack, and we use HubSpot. That's it.
Never used HubSpot. You'd recommend it, presumably. Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, it's more important that you have deep expertise within a CRM than I think the particular CRM you choose. A massive company, massive companies use Zoho, massive companies use Salesforce, massive companies use HubSpot. I think it's less important which one you choose, more so that you are really good at the one that you choose.
Yeah, as long as you have everything consolidated and you don't go insane in the process. So for you, if you guys have 8 companies, you said, under acquisition, was that before you started like your really aggressive rise on social media? Was that at 0, or were you already had
No,
some?
I had 3 or 4. I can't remember what timing was. It was either 3 or 4.
And how many more applicants do you have now relative to them?
I mean, I didn't even really have the applicants before were just people who reached out to me that, from the sale or just from industry stuff, whatever they had heard of what we had done. You know what? It's 4. So we had 4. We've only taken on 4 more since this rapid rise.
Okay.
But the thing is it's kind of like what I was saying. I mean, our quote acceptance rate right now is 0.2% of companies that apply. And it's just because we're not in a rush. There's no finish to the race. It's much more like, do we think that we can add a lot of value to these businesses? And if we don't, we just say like, hey, here's what we would do. Not sure if it's a perfect fit. Wish you the best. You know what I mean? And hey, that's why we make all the free stuff. So like, hey, like go use all that if it's not a fit.
And how many companies do you actually end up on a call with to screen versus, because if you have a 0.2% acceptance rate or whatever,
I talked to every one of them.
Really?
No, God, no. I couldn't.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. That's fucking impossible.
Even if I took 1 minute per, it wouldn't make sense.
So do you have like one C-suite guy who just like has a front line? He's like the gates to get through to you or Layla sort of thing?
Yeah. So HubSpot has automated rules in terms of decision making. So there's lots of black and white metrics that we can apply for decision making to the applications that come in, and that'll automatically screen, probably 80% of them.
Wow.
And then from there, the 20% that's remaining, he will probably visually screen another 20% out. So probably get it down to another 80%. So there are 4% that are left. And then from there, he'll probably talk to those 4%. And then of that 4%, he'll probably push 1% to like a second call. And then at that point, we'd kind of talk about, it's not a sales process. You know what I mean? It's a 90-day process. We do diligence on the company. We talk to their entire leadership team. We want to get a pulse of the company, because otherwise we can't figure out what value we can provide. Like if I don't know anything about the company, then how am I going to say, here's all the holes I can fill when they might not have those holes? So it's only when we very clearly understand all these things together and it checks every box that we then move forward. And that's kind of right now the average portfolio company that we have triples their profit within the first 12 months.
Wow.
So like, and to be fair, we pick a tiny itty bitty sliver of a box, which is if you can sing the ABC backwards in Arabic, sitting on one foot and rubbing your head and patting your belly, and you're a $3 million plus education entrepreneur, in a niche or teaches an income skill, then we're your huckleberry. And that's just because I looked at the people who have really good private equity funds, and they niche down for a good reason, because you learn a ton, and the more times we do it, the better we get at it. And so then the more paint by numbers this becomes, so we can just say with more and more confidence and increased certainty and faster decisions that we can get some from point A to point B.
So you mentioned you have screening criteria that screens out 80% of people in HubSpot, but like on your website, for example, you put in your name, your website, email, phone number, annual revenue, annual profit, book a call. Mm-hmm. When you book a call, like how do you get screened above and beyond? Like do you have a bunch of people who just lie on this form, and then how do you?
Well, the button says book a call because it converts better than submit. But the second screen there, if you were to submit, click book a call. In order to book a call, you have to fill out the company intake form, which is like 20 questions.
Okay.
So that's the next thing. So there's 20 questions there that are much more in depth, which is like, how many acquisition channels do you have? What percentage are they attributed to? What is your churn right now? What's average price? How many, what's your sales velocity? How many units per month are you selling? And so we get a much better, where are you incorporated out of? How many founders do you have? What's the, all those types of questions that we would want to normally figure out. Mm-hmm. And those are usually questions that we would ask on a phone call. We just ask them beforehand. And then from there, we can get a really good pulse on the company. Because if we look at somebody's website and and we know what platforms they're advertising on, we can look at their advertising, which is what we'll do. We'll go look at the advertising, we'll look at the stuff. But oftentimes, a lot of people apply and don't meet the black and white metrics. They're like, I'm going to be at 3 million. We're like, well, you know.
Yeah. It's not good enough. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not, and I love the community, and I root for everybody to do it. But it's just because of the nature of, it's a time constraint. You know what I mean? And so there's a reason Warren Buffett has a hard time allocating his capital. It's because there's not that many $100 billion fish that he can spend his money on. Like, he could double his money if he bought $1 million things, but then he would still have 149 million left to spend. He just couldn't do it time-wise. So, you know.
So with the current market and stuff crashing, you know, crypto's down, stock market's down, presumably you're pretty thrilled that you are liquid right now. Like, I think you, if I recall correctly, you're like out of everything right now, right? Like just sitting on, okay. So you timed that pretty well, obviously. So for you, being like future minded about what your overall vision is for acquisition.com and knowing that your ROI for an investment on a $3 million annual revenue company or whatever is exponentially better than at best a 10% return on a good year in the stock market. Like, are you at a point where you're just like, fuck real estate, stock, crypto, none of it. I can just invest in myself in my own like, acquisition structure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sure, we own a few buildings and things like that, but acquisition.com is 100% the wealth vehicle. And and you probably know this, it's just all the people that I see that are the wealthiest have found games where they can create unfair advantages. You know what I mean? Where they have something that's in their favor. And so, the nice thing with acquisition.com is that we spent 12 to 18 months really thinking through how we wanted to build it, the structure, just everything to put into place. Whereas every other company up to this point has been a little bit more reactive. It's been like, oh, this is what everybody wants, let's go make it, right? This one was like, what do we want? Because the people that are the wealthiest that I know have things that took them 20, 30, 40 years to build. And so I was like, well, if this thing's going to be $1 billion plus, then it's going to take time. You know what I mean? And we're not tech. So we're not going to, it's not going to be, a single tech explosion or some adoption of something. And so we have to be really methodical about how we approach it. And so it's probably going to take 10 years or 20 years, which means that I and Layla both have to enjoy it. It has to be something that we find meaningful, and that we are excited to do every day, and that we continue to feel challenged and stimulated from. Because the other thing is, I know that I can do any business for 3 to 5 years, but I know at that point I start to get itchy, which my track record shows. I start to get itchy, and so with this business, part of the reason we designed it this way is that I can go all in on these businesses, get exposed to different industries, and if I want to say, let's say I see an opportunity in sales recruiting, whatever. I can say, instead of me starting a sales academy, I can say, well, why don't I go find a sales academy that I think's awesome and then get exposure to that opportunity. And so that way I can do all the stuff that I want to do and help that company kind of execute those things. And then that way I still stay focused on my main thing, which is acquisition.com, without being distracted, but I get to participate in kind of some of the upside.
And when you go for minority stake, like, obviously this varies on situation to situation, but is there like a minimum of amount of equity you look for to have enough skin in the game for it to be worthwhile?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. By the way, I'm loving this interview, by the way, just letting you know. This is great. I love to talk about this stuff. So it has to be enough that we care, but it can't be so much that they stop caring. So that's the balance. There's like a fine line there, right? And so we found that to be like 20 to 30%. Is enough that we're meaningfully invested, and the founder is still meaningfully vested in the outcome. So everybody is just charging full on, towards the goal.
Okay, and
that's been our sweet spot.
I feel like I probably know the answer because you have enough of an infrastructure team-wise to kind of like carry out the objectives you have, seemingly. But is there, like, you have 8 companies under you right now? Is there like some capacity limit where, and obviously you haven't got there, so maybe you can't put like a hard stop on this, but is there like a breaking point where it's like, holy shit, we need more team to support the amount of companies we want to have under us right now? Like,
for sure. Yeah, we run a pod structure. So, we'll have a handful of people who are specialists over a specific pod.
Because even if you're doing a weekly meeting with each one and you've like really dialed it in to a point where you're like super just basic oversight mode of them, I feel like that still adds up to where you're like in a monthly oversight meeting with like 20 companies or something. It's like you're doing a big fucking meeting like every day to a point where you have no idea what's going on with anything essentially.
Well, it depends on what the type of the meeting is, right? And so if it's, if we have a cadence to check in on how they're doing on a playbook, I'm not required for that. Like the playbook's documented, this is what we need to implement, here are the ads to get the person in place, to run this play, et cetera, right? From a monthly perspective, me reviewing the numbers, we already clean the data on our side so that we can see it, just the key numbers that we care about. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure like when you read financials for your own company, it's like, I'm not looking at everything. I'm looking at the handful of things that matter to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at net free cash flow, I'm looking at growth, I'm looking at sales units, I'm looking at conversion numbers, and that's about it. You know what I mean? The churn is kind of factors in for all the customer lifetime value stuff. In terms of, to circle back to the original question, which is like, is there a cap? There is a cap for the current capacity, but right now we have more employees than we have portfolio companies, for context. So this isn't like, but again, this is a type of business model where like, for example, APG, American Pacific Group, who's the private equity fund that purchased majority shares in Jim Lunch and Prestige, I think they have like 13 people, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? And so it's, Berkshire Hathaway has 19 employees and they have, 500,000 employees through their, portfolio companies or whatever it is, some enormous number. And so I talk a lot about leverage, but like finding opportunities where your inputs have, the discrepancy between inputs and outputs is high. And so, in this business, the goal when we were structuring it was like, how can we provide tremendous value to companies without being limited in that way, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And so that was the goal. But for us, because of the nature of how our things work, we can attract talent that they cannot attract. We can have people work on their company that they would never have access to. And in that way, the only people who would get access to those things would be funded companies. And so in a lot of ways, we're able to give entrepreneurs who are bootstrapped an advantage that they would never normally have. They would never have access to this level of talent to help them grow their company. And then in so doing, get such a huge multiple on the equity appreciation that happens from what, when they start with us, is usually valueless. And I don't say that as a slight, but more so just the reality is that if you have a driven brand and you're doing $3 million a year, $1 million in cash flow, like there's not a lot of people who are going to want to buy that from you and let you walk away. Like it's just, the buyer market is minuscule. Now, if in 5 years it's doing 30 million top line, 10 or 12 million in EBITDA, and you're completely removed from the face of the business and it's really become Hairstyle Academy rather than, Sarah Lee's hairstyle, secrets or whatever, that does have enterprise value. And that absolutely can be sold for 50, 80, $100 million. And so for us, it's like that equity appreciation for the founder, it would be unlikely that they would get that kind of personal wealth increase without having just tons of experience doing it. And we can just shorten the curve.
Now, when it comes to valuations, I've seen drastically different numbers when it comes to 1 times revenue, 3 times EBITDA, this, that. And a lot of times you'll have like an expert value it and it's like way the fuck off from what you expected. Or like is there a certain strategy you use where it's like these companies, they're a good opportunity, but their valuation model is just like way off from yours? And if so, how do you kind of like reel them back into reality?
Well, none of the companies that we're working with are coming in with the idea that they're going to this isn't a liquidity event for them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're coming
but
to
like
us not for
presumably
money,
some of them want you to
expertise.
put skin. Oh, like do you ever have to buy into companies though, or is it more just your value?
Sometimes, but not always.
Okay.
Sometimes, but not always. So it just depends because like my payroll is higher than some of these companies' entire revenue. So like the amount of time, if I were to bill hourly for what we're going to front before we even receive our first dollar, is usually more than I would put into the company for the appropriate amount of equity. And we're purely based on the fact that we're going to make it up on the back end.
So those companies you do buy into though, how do you quantify what that buy-in is? Like some sort of calculation that you defer to, presumably.
Yeah, 100%. But like it is, it's much more important. Like it's not a big deal negotiation point is my thing. Because like many of them, the cash that they're getting, if they get cash, is not material. And so it doesn't matter to them and it doesn't matter to us. And to the point that you said about like having skin in the game, if a $3 million company that's doing $1 million in EBITDA, right? If we valued it at $1 million, let's just say we valued it at $1 million, which I don't think anyone would buy it for $1 million, but let's just say we valued it at $1 million, and I bought 20%, which would be $200,000. That's not going to like change anything in my life. And I say that, and I hope that comes off the right way, but it's like, that's not going to get me, that's not skin in the game for me. You know what I mean? Like the skin in the game is the fact that we can take this thing to here, right? And that's what that is the thing that drives me, not the 200. So like the $200,000 would make no difference to me, and likely this person, if they're making $1 million a year, it wouldn't make any difference to them either. And so that's kind of where this comes, because we're taking them at this stage.
At that point, I see even the negotiation process, you end up losing more money just talking about it than whatever amount you could gain otherwise.
Exactly.
But once you've taken it to 50 million and you have your guys on your side saying it's this, and you have their guys on their side who wants to buy your company saying it's that, do you have like, what is like the deferred to?
Yeah. So I want to make sure that I'm answering the right question. So are you saying, how are these companies valued at exit, or how are these companies valued at purchase on our
I kind of changed the question in the middle, sorry. But like once you build it up, like how do you, because that delta can oftentimes be substantial.
Oh yeah, that's the whole, I mean that's our whole game. You know what I mean? Like the whole game is that we're taking something that doesn't usually have a lot of intrinsic value. It's usually just a guy or a gal who's got a thing and they're selling it. Right, but as soon as they stop selling it, money stops. So there's not a lot of reliability to the revenue stream, which is why the value is almost nothing, right? If we're doing the example I said, so 30 million top line, 10 million bottom line, we'll just use that as the number. They right now, it depends. Everything depends on the churn within the business. So how reliable the future. So I would say there's two big pieces. One is how big is the market, and / how likely are they to capture the market. Multiplied by how sticky is the revenue. So if we're gobbling up market share and it just keeps compounding and stacking on itself because everyone keeps loving the thing that we sell, then it's going to be tremendously valuable. If it's a much more transactional company, then we're going to get a much lower multiple. And so I would say, the range is huge there. I would say it's probably like 6 to 12 is kind of the multiple range there. For a company that was doing 10 million, it'd probably be like, maybe 8 to 12. But again, it also will depend on the terms of the deal. So you'd have, a certain percentage that would be rolled in equity, a certain percentage that would be seller finance, certain percentage that would be, consulting back, and then a certain percentage that would be cash. And so, all those things added together might be the 8x, but maybe cash portion might only be 5 or whatever.
So we're talking a multiple of EBITDA right now, or?
Yeah, EBITDA. Yeah.
Okay.
For these types of companies, it's going to be on EBITDA.
So you're saying a company that has a net of 10 could be worth like 80, is what you're saying?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Huh.
If they have if there's a story of growth that is believable, that has a high likelihood of occurring, if they have multiple channels of acquisition, if they are not dependent on the founder's face, if they have low churn or lower or negative MRR, high gross margins, low capital expenses, if they have all of those things, then yes.
And I don't know if this is something you can even disclose, so feel free to, not answer. But when you were selling Gym Launch, Prestige, Allen, was there like a number that you thought you should get versus what they thought they should get, and then you met in the middle, and like what was that range?
I think we sold Gym Launch for what it was worth.
Okay.
Like a fair valuation. I don't think we got paid, and I don't think we got destroyed. I think it was a fair value. And because of also the terms of the deal, we got, like I said earlier, like it was an all cash deal. So we could have, so here, I'll tell you a side note. So if I wanted to, and our bankers even said this, and I was like, I just can't do it because I would look at myself in the mirror. But they were like, if you want to like jack this value up for like the story, they're like, we could paper this deal to get to 100. Like we'll just load you up with earnouts that are like, if Gym Launch does 100 million in EBITDA the year after, then Alex gets a $50 million bonus. Right, like, because the likelihood that happens is 0, and if it did happen, they'd be fucking thrilled, right? And so then I could say, hey guys, I sold for $100 million, and that would be really sexy. It would also be completely false. I mean, it would be true by the letter of the law, but I would not feel legit. And so The number that I shared is the actual number, 100% cash, no consulting, no earnout, no anything. That was the deal.
And what were the percentages you guys sold again, and the total amount?
We sold 66. We sold 66 of two, and we sold 75 of the software company.
Okay, and then you retain equity in that, and do you have to be like oversee it with the same capacity that you do your other portfolio companies, or like how?
We do though. We do, but we don't have to. We have zero contractual obligation. I just love the team, and I talked because I mean we spent 6 years together, so like.
Yeah.
It's like, hey man, I can't help you anymore for anything that you have. Because like, even if it wasn't a company at this point, if they moved to a company that I didn't own at all, I would talk to these people the exact same way that I do.
Right.
But we have no contractual obligation to do so. I do it because I love them.
And what was the amount again? Sorry. So 66 and 70.
Yeah.
46 total, or what was it again?
No, that was just for Gym Launch and Prestige.
Okay, and then Alan was what again?
That one's on NDA.
Oh, okay,
so.
No worry.
Yeah.
And then
and the thing I had to, and that's standard. Normally it's standard boilerplate to have an NDA for the total amount of the agreement. But I knew I was going to build acquisition.com, and so I was specific up front. I was like, I would like to be able to say this partially to prove the point that you had, which is like these companies are sellable and they do have value if you build them the right way.
Right. And as far as like strategy and tactics for taxation on that exit, I know I had tax as like a separate topic for later in the conversation, but I feel like I should just jump to it now because it's relevant. But like your strategy on it, I've heard you say multiple times how you've taken tons of, consultations and this and that, trying to learn about all of the different ways to save on tax. And then in hindsight, you're like, fuck it, I wish I just like paid my fucking tax and didn't even try any of this weird exotic stuff. With corporate exits, do you feel the same, or how did you guys structure that? Okay.
Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, there is a clear tax structure that we could have done to pay no taxes. It's called like a cascading disregarded trust structure. So it's basically there's a $5 million exemption per disregarded trust, and you have to have a different person who is in charge of each, or who's a benefactor of each of the trusts. It also gets around estate tax later if you're going to, pass it on to your kids or whatever. And so, we could have basically done you basically multiply the amount of money that you have times $5 million or divided by $5 million, and that's how many trusts you have to set up with different benefactors in each of them, and you have to trust whoever you're putting as the benefactor and all of them. And if you do it that way, and you wait 36 months so that it can't be unwound, like there's a whole bunch of hair, right? Yeah. And so I was like, dude, this isn't how I'm getting to $1 billion. Like I'm not going to save, the 20% here is not going to get me to $1 billion. Now some people will be like, hey, pennies add up, and they do. I agree with you. But in terms of like, there's one thing, because I could see both stories, because like, here's story one. Alex gets to $1 billion and didn't pay any taxes and did a bunch of stuff to get there. The story that I would say there, and I would defend, is like, hey, I played by the rules of the game, and everybody should play by the rules of the game and be good at it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. On the flip side of that, there's like, we got to $1 billion and we paid full boat the whole time. It's because we love the game.
Yeah. So.
And I think that's, and again, not to say like, do I expense a dinner if we're going out? Sure. You know what I mean? Whatever. But is that going to make a material difference in my taxes? No. So, you know what I mean? But big picture stuff, like if anything's gray, if it's gray, I've just over time, I've just stopped. That's not how the richest people do it. The richest people do it by equity appreciation over time, by building businesses, and they get a multiple in those businesses. That's how they do it. And that's all tax-free.
Yeah.
It's all tax-free.
When you expense your dinner, by the way, it just popped into my head. Do you literally take a picture of your receipt and like categorize it when you get home? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't, but I mean, the team does. Yeah.
So you just hand it to your team when you get home, or like how's that work?
I take a picture and I send it to billing. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. All right. And you always take pictures? You can't just go by a credit card statement? Does that not work?
No, I take pictures because you want to show it's itemized. That way it's not like, it's by the book.
Damn. For a while I was doing that and I was like, this is a fucking hassle. And then I started just going by credit card statements, and now I realize I should probably have been taking pictures that whole time. So. Yeah.
Well, the thing is like if I'm signing it with my hand, my phone's right there, so I can just take the picture. It's not too bad. And I just literally just text it. And that's
in Canada, you don't sign anything. You just like get your cards. Yeah, it was weird because I was in the States recently for a business trip, and then I totally forgot that they don't have the card scanners that just like auto charge you. They make you like sign a receipt still and like add the tip and stuff. Here it's just like they give you a machine, you type in the tip and then and then that's it. Yeah.
There's some places that do it here now, but it's still mostly signed.
Yeah, okay. As far as the challenging aspects of scaling companies now for you that you're in this position with acquisition.com, do you find the challenges are largely the same that faced the companies you built, like Gym Launch and stuff, or is it like a whole new unique set of scaling problems where it's like, you know, headhunting enough people that are on your team that are going to carry out the work at the quality you need, and then overseeing that team to make sure their quality is spot on? Or like, what are your big challenges now? Like existing problems that you're like actually dealing with.
Finding good people is always a constant. You know what I mean? Whether when we had Gym Launch and Prestige Labs and acquisition or the portfolio companies, you know, and I would say that that's the thing that we invest the most time in, is how to, because the thing is like, from the private equity perspective, it's like you can buy or you build. That's kind of like the age-old thing. It's like, do we want to buy this thing or do we want to build it ourselves? And I think if you chunk down one level, within a company, you can buy or you can build. So you can buy the talent or you can train people who don't have the talent to have the talent. And so we tend to be buyers on the micro level and builders on the macro level. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So like with companies, I mean, obviously we're buying into these companies, but the vast majority of the equity value we're building rather than buying, right? So we're not doing lots of roll-ups, we're actually organically growing these businesses. But on a micro level within the businesses, we prefer to find, I mean, if there's the opportunity to promote from within, we'll obviously do that. But a lot of times, the companies that we're working with, the founder is the most experienced person in the business. And it's my belief that a business is limited by the total intellectual capacity of the entire company. And if every person has a subset of the knowledge of the founder, then it means one man is the cap of the business. And that is typically what happens when they're at 3, 5, 10 million. Whereas when you see a $30 million company, usually there's 3 or 4 people that all know a ton of stuff about different things, and that's why they are that big. And so I see it as like a Christmas tree, where it's like the bigger the top amount of knowledge is, the wider the base is, the bigger the company grows.
Okay. And as far as
we spend all our time up there.
Right. Now, when you find these people, it's a lot harder to find really good like C-suite level employees and whatnot and executives than, I don't know if it used to be better in terms of talent pool, because I'm just kind of like into this for the first time now of hiring like really high level people. And oftentimes trying to figure out how to compensate somebody who's like an A player, it's very, very uncharted waters oftentimes. It's like, how do you determine somebody for like, I'm like an influencer sort of who runs a company that does like
very much
disproportionate traffic and has like a unique kind of product offering or services, and then bringing in people who can reflect the quality of work I need and oversee like 50 people and do this and do that. And it's like, where do I type in on Google like what this guy gets paid? Like, how do you determine pay structures for top guys?
Yeah.
Guys, it's come to my attention that some people are not manscaping. Disgusting pubes, hairy backs, butt crack hair. What are you doing? You got to take care of that shit. This is where support for today's show comes in. Manscaped, the best in males below the waist grooming. This is the package for the Performance Package 4.0. This is something that basically has everything you need down to the last butthole hair, bro. This is the Lawnmower 4.0 is included. This trimmer is the future of grooming and perhaps the greatest ball trimmer of all time after going through 4 iteration changes. This is the 4th generation trimmer. It features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. It's also waterproof, so you can say goodbye to mess on the floor, pubes on the floor, not a good look, bro. And in addition to that, taking your grooming to the next level with the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. Also not a good look having either of those things popping, bro. Fucking bad. In addition, their Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner will change the way you approach your hygiene regimen. Your balls will thank you, as said on the inside of the package. In all seriousness, I think individuals should all be manscaping, because if you're not, that's like such a fucking ridiculous like disadvantage to have over other males in the dating marketplace, bro. Like, imagine a girl goes down on you and you just like have done absolutely no hygiene. You have no hygiene. Like, that's terrible, you know? You want to feel clean, you want to feel confident. You want to just not be a disgusting fucking woolly mammoth, bro. It's not good. Take time to take care of yourself and go to manscaped.com. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code Derek. In addition, if you're a fitness guy, the difference in how lean you look when you manscape versus not, when it comes to your abs, chest, vascularity on your arms especially, even though you don't have that much arm hair, or you might, I don't know, like some people are way worse than others, but even when it doesn't seem like you have that much and it's fine, the difference in vascularity, if you've been, you know, very lean, you know the fucking difference. It's literally like a few percent body fat seemingly instantly pulled off of your body when you shave properly and manscape. So anyways, you can check it out. Link in the description below. 20% off and free shipping. Code Derek at manscaped.com. Thank you for supporting today's video, and back to our regularly scheduled programming.
So I'll say right now I'm going to be putting my Layla hat on, because this is 100% all the stuff that Layla does. I'll give a couple general statements and then a little bit more weeds. But at least as we see it, we see compensation as the ticket to get in, which is we have to have it at a point where A players would say yes. We believe that A players do A-level activity because of who they are, not because of what they're getting paid. And so it's like you have to have the bar high enough that they're going to want to work for you. But most people, like salesmen, sell because they are salesmen. The comp has to be enough that they're going to want to start working for you, but they're not going to sell less hard because of the comp. That's at least our compensation philosophy. We also tend to pay very well for that, but for the reason because we want to attract the best talent. You know what I mean? And so that's like big picture number one. The second thing is that I think from a tactical perspective, and I learned this from Layla, so this is not mine. You learn a lot about the role by interviewing for the role. And so you learn a couple things. One is you learn what the actual, like you can go to payscale.com and there's, you know, Glassdoor, things like that, to try and figure out how much someone's going to get paid. But there's so many unique natures of like a role in this type of business, blah, 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 that it's more useful to just talk to everybody, see where everyone's at, and then you'll get a real pulse for what the market is, right? And then in terms of like figuring out the job role and who's right for it, I think a good litmus test is, who am I, A, excited to talk to, and B, who am I learning from? Because the way that it should work, in my opinion, at the C-level and above, is that we get on the call and they're telling me what should happen at this stage for the business. If I'm like, hey, these are all the things I need you to do, then they're not the right person. Because the right person would say, totally understand, I would do it like this. It's because 2 other times I did it the way you said it, and it didn't work. So we tried it this way, and it's been working a lot better. I was like, oh. And so what happens is as these interviews stack up, you take notes, and then you get a really good idea of all the best practices, and you can start seeing who's got game.
Now, when you said, when you're trying to figure out pay structure, you ask around, like, who are you asking exactly?
On the interviews.
Like you're asking them what they...
Well, you could put a big range depending on experience. You say, boom, from here to here, range with variable comp. And most of that's a negotiation anyway. So it's really, again, what you put on the ad is just like the ticket to get someone to respond. And that's, again, if you're doing an ad. Most like true executive positions are headhunted.
So you're saying you're literally asking the person you're interviewing what they want to make is what you're saying?
Yeah, what do you think's right for the role?
Right, okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, that's sort of like what I arrived at too. I was just like, what possible other way could I figure out some random pull an answer out of my ass when it's like, I have no idea personally, to be honest, for a lot of these roles. So
yeah, I mean, you look at PayScale, you look at Glassdoor, you have a rough idea, you have your idea of what it is, and if everybody you get on the phone with is like, well, I'm currently making 200, and so for me to leave, I'd probably have to make, at least that. And you hear that over and over again, and people are like, and you can ask it different ways. You can just say, what are you making now? That'll give you at least a litmus test of what they're leaving. And if they're unemployed, then they're probably not, it would be less common for the type of level of person you're looking for, because most of those people who are A players and are good at the thing usually do have a job.
Do you ever fact check when somebody's like, oh, I make 250, and you're just like, okay, yeah, you do?
I don't think we have a way to do it. I mean, if someone doesn't have that, then they're going to be out really quick anyways.
Makes sense.
Unimpeachable character. It's one of the values.
Yeah. your skills that got you to 100 million versus when you were at like 10, do you find that a lot of it was just hiring the right executive people, or like what has changed about you and your skills and thought process over the last few years?
Yeah, it's all people.
Yeah.
It's so boring. I mean, I remember being in the audience and seeing these big guys speak and being like, it's all about hiring a great team. You got to hire people smarter than you. And I was like, this guy's full of it. He just doesn't want to tell us the secrets. But like, that is the secret. You know what I mean? It's simple, not easy. You know, and so I think the $1 billion skill is being able to accurately judge, discern people's talent, and know how to lead a team of A players. Because I will say this, from a demandingness perspective, A players demand an even better leader than B players do. So I think I did this tweet the other day, but it's like, I think this is deeper than it's going to, I feel like, hit most people. But like, I think you have to be worthy of the team that's going to get you to where you want to go. And so if you're like, I want to get to 100 million, or I want to get to 500 million, it's my belief that there's a team that can get you there, absolutely. The question is, are they going to want to work for you?
Got it. Yeah. No, I feel like I kind of knew the answer, but sort of just wanted to hear you say it too. But by the way, how'd you get verified on Twitter and you're not on Instagram? That's weird.
I'm verified everywhere except for Instagram.
Yeah, like I don't understand it. Like that seems so odd.
I got a guy I can connect you with him.
Oh, really? Okay.
They did it in like a week. That was actually like the easiest one.
Really? Damn. Because that's like one of the ones I don't have. Okay. Yeah. If you
gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
Yeah, literally. That's what it seems like. Have you ever had to? No, sorry, you were like cutting out here. Is my connection okay, by the way? It seems kind of like glitchy.
Yeah, I think we're it's all good. Anyways, go ahead.
So circling back to the executives, have you ever fired any? And if so, what were the reasons?
Yeah. I to be fair, I haven't fired many. Layla has done the majority of the firing. Because most of the team rolls into her. So Layla very much like runs the businesses. Like she is really functional CEO. She just makes me look good. But it really is very much her. She doesn't get nearly the credit that she deserves because she really does run these things. And she's an unbelievable operator. But the question was, why did we fire them? Usually it's because it's a variety of reasons. You know, it could be a culture fit. It could be that their skill set got us to where we are, and you know they haven't been able to adapt to what is required for the next level of growth. Usually at an executive level, it's going to be one of those things. I mean, we've had the quick early fires that are like a week in. You know what I mean? Those ones are like, wow, missed that one. You know, I mean, there was one time we paid a headhunter, I think, $100,000 or $140,000, something like that, to headhunt a CTO for us, and I think we fired him 2 days in.
Wow, jeez.
Just wasn't worth it. We could tell right away. He was late to 3 meetings on the first day, and he said he couldn't figure out how to use Zoom. And I was like, "You're CTO. How can you not figure out how to use Zoom?"
Yeah,
like that's
like literally
like your job. Like that's what you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I was like, I don't know. We've got frontline, customer service that's able to figure this out, no problem. So what am I missing here? And so it just seems we're like, cool. Like, I'm sure you have a story. I just don't care. You know what I mean? Like at this level, I would in the comp that this guy is probably a $500,000 a year employee. Like you're expected to bring it. And if you can't do simple things right, then you're not going to do the great things right.
Right. And as far as your finding an executive assistant, you mentioned, have you gone through 8 to find your current one? Or
yes, I'm on number 9, and yes, I've gone through 8. It's actually something I'm very ashamed of.
So that process, did you have to do every interview yourself because it's your own assistant? So presumably, you're more involved in that.
I think I've made basically every mistake you can make with with an executive assistant. Even the way I thought about it was wrong for pretty much all of them until this one. So first off, many people call themselves executive assistants when they are in fact administrative assistants. I was looking for an executive assistant, and we said executive assistant, but I didn't even know what executive assistant was. That was the term everyone used. And what I consistently got was administrative assistants. And there's nothing wrong with administrative assistants. It just wasn't what I was looking for. And so that was number one. Number two is that I was not involved in the interview process until like the final interview. So they would give me like 2 people and be like, pick, these are the 2 best. And I would basically just pick from those. And I just, and I didn't know what right looked like. And this is a really good like analogy for like acquisition.com. I didn't know what right looked like. And so as a result, I had to hire again and again and again until I got lucky and I found what right looked like. And now for the rest of my life, I know what I'm going to have for an executive assistant. I know exactly what it looks like. At my level, what I do, what my life looks like, I know exactly what they need to do. And I will be able to always have that for the rest of my life. And the same thing goes for, how do I find a sales director at $1 million a month? How do I find a sales director at $2 million a month? How do I, what does that look like? How do we transition from staff accountant to controller to CFO? What does it look like? So like we know what those look like, and that's how we fast track this, because we just eliminate the fuck ups, for lack of a better term, of going through it. Because I basically not had an executive assistant for 5 years. I mean, I've had one, but I haven't used one. They weren't really executive assistants. So that was number 2. Number 3 is that I actually, I guess with the interview thing, that was 3. So number 4 is I didn't have tremendous rapport with the assistants that I had before this. Nothing wrong with them, great people. I just I didn't look forward to speaking with them. And if I don't look forward to talking to you or want to talk to you, I just don't. And if you don't talk to your assistant, they have a really hard time assisting you. And that's on me. Yeah. That's my fault. But that was a huge thing. And I think part of it was that I was like, that shouldn't matter. I can be a good leader. I don't have, like, it felt petty that I would have to like the person. But it was really dumb. And so like, you absolutely should like the person because you want to talk to him. If you want to talk to, like, with Melanie, it's like, I'll send her, I'm like, hey, I just wrote this bio for a speech. What do you think? And she's like, I think it sounds good. Or I'm like, hey, what do you think about this paragraph from the book? Like, I want her feedback, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this t-shirt design or whatever, and she gut checks it with me. And I trust her judgment because it's supposed to be an executive assistant, which means they have to be able to do executive functions, which means she has to work on my behalf or in my stead in a lot of places. So she has to be able to read emails, know what I would say, and go for it. And that develops over time, but that's how she can really give me my time back, which is why in some ways it's the most valuable, hire in the company.
As far as, like, again, I don't know the difference between administrative assistant and executive. Like, this is my first time hearing the disparity. Yeah. Like, how do you determine the compensation structure for EA? Do you ask them in the interview too? It's the same exact thing? And like, what do you think this is?
Well, the range is going to be much smaller. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, there was 2 questions there. So the administrative assistant versus executive. Executive is like they're assisting at the executive level. They sit on executive meetings, et cetera, right? Administrative assistant typically just helps with administrative tasks, which means like paperwork, scheduling, correspondence. That's it. And that's usually where their skill set stops. An executive assistant can have probably elements of project management that are in place. They can drive initiatives. They can have their own, quarterly goals that they're driving. You know what I mean? So they're much more involved, and they act like mini operators on behalf of the CEO, rather than, or whoever they're working for, rather than just like, hey, can you get me coffee and things like that. So there's just different levels. So that was that. The compensation that you're asking about, I think it depends on the company. I mean, I've got a friend who has 2 executive assistants, and she pays them both $200,000 a year. So like, there's that level, right? And she runs a really lean company, and she runs a lot of stuff through them, right? And they run everything in her life. And she has a very big business. On the other side, I would say if you want a really good, executive assistant, it's going to start at 70. It's going to start there, and it can kind of go all the way up to what I was saying. So like, that's the range, and it really depends on past experience, and ideally a similar type of business and CEO to you. So Melanie, I was very fortunate, worked for another CEO of a company who's very public facing. And so she knows what the demands of like podcasts and writing a book. And sometimes I just need quiet days, which is like, I just need to write all day or whatever I'm going to do. And she gets that. So she just clears everything for me. If like Layla's relationship with her executive assistant is entirely different than mine with Melanie. One of the other issues I had is I kept comparing my relation, like what I thought I should have, to what Layla had with Yasmin, which is her executive assistant. And I basically just kept failing because I kept trying to recreate something that didn't need to exist.
Huh. And does she have your life scheduled out to like the minute for months in advance or something? Because like when I was trying to, for example, scheduling this podcast, the two options were like today or like 2 months from now. And I was like, holy shit. So is it like that intense where it's down to the minute for weeks in advance?
That was pretty good. I mean, I know. I mean, if I have a blank spot on my schedule, I'll just text her and be like, what should I be doing right now? And she's like, these are your priorities. This is probably a 30-minute task. And I'm like, all right, and I'll just do that. So in a lot of like, she helps me do more.
Right.
And also she's a huge gatekeeper. You know what I mean? A lot of times probably like you, I'm sure you get a ton of requests. And so, you know, we also help the decision-making criteria, which is like, okay, what's required for a speaking engagement? What's required for a podcast? What's required for in-person? What's required, you know, like what are all the things that we're looking for? And this is how I would make the decision. And so she just does it again and again. And now I just trust her decision-making.
And is she expected to be in-house like 40 hours a week, or how does it, like, because you guys are in...
We're all remote.
So where's she from? Is it she in the States or?
She's in Idaho. Yeah, she's in Idaho.
Okay. Huh.
Badass Boise.
Yeah, that's where one of my companies is, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, nice.
Yeah, I might buy a place there in the future because I live in Canada, so it's kind of odd because all my companies are U.S. based, but I live in British Columbia. So, yeah. But Idaho looks awesome. The cost of living is good. Housing you can get, good. It's a pretty chill area. It's where ClickFunnels is. ClickFunnels is there.
Clean, safe, all that stuff.
So with acquisition.com, obviously the grand goal, you know, you guys want to get to $1 billion. But do you have do you segment it by, like you're always talking about like long-term goals, you know, the best entrepreneurs or guys who are thinking like 15 years ahead kind of thing rather than short term. But being mindful of that, do you still segment that 15 years into like micro 1 year increments? Or is it more like billion and like that's where my mind is? Or is it like 2022, I need to get this done by the end of the year also?
Yeah, I think the big picture is like the heart. You know what I mean? It's like you have to have something that's going to pull you. And candidly, the billion doesn't pull me. You know what I mean? Like that's more like I think that's going to be something that will happen if we do these other things. The thing that pulls me is the mission, which is to document and share the best practices of building world-class companies. Like me writing, like there's truly nothing that I get more enjoyment out of than writing the books. Like writing the books and making like, and when I have the time because I try to do it, like when I make those slide presentations and I put them on YouTube, like there are very few things that bring me more joy in life. Like I really, really like it. And it makes me feel like some of the mistakes and the lessons that I learned, like it feels like it's going to help somebody else. And to me, it feels like those, even though I messed up, I'm like, well, someone else doesn't have to. And so I feel like I'm getting credit or like I'm, like, you know what I'm saying? Like somebody else doesn't have to fuck this up. And so it doesn't feel like it's in vain. And so that's why I think I enjoy doing it so much. But that's the thing that like really drives me. The billion is just like, I think we'll have even more credibility for the lessons that we taught. And I think that it'll be cool because people will be able to watch the videos from when we were at, 13 million a month or 15 million a month compared to when we're at 100 million a month. So I'd be like, so I think that'll be coolest. I wish Bezos and Musk had done that. So this is like me hoping to fulfill that dream for somebody else. And then in terms of the micro, so the longest actual planning time horizon we have is 36 months. So 36 months and then 12 and then quarters. And then, we've got, weekly and monthly stuff, but that's kind of how we break things down. The big planning is 36, 12, and quarters. That's the real big stuff. Everything else is kind of blocking and tackling.
So what's your end of Q4 goals? Do you have any like set out right now, or is it waiting until what happens in Q2, Q3 to figure that out sort of thing?
I would like to double, for me, if we doubled the portfolio revenue by the end of the year, that'd be great. Which we do by just growing the businesses, which right now we're on track to do. So I'm pretty pumped about it.
And you don't set like hard deadlines on like book completions or anything. That's more just like a hobby for free time, or
the books. If anything, acquisition.com does not need the book. Like the book is for me. If anything, the book makes acquisition.com less money because there's stuff that I should be doing right now. Literally, Layla and I were having conversations about this last night. I was just saying like, I just wanted to say thank you to her because I was like, I know that there are things that I should be doing right now that I'm not doing because I want to write this book and I'm doing it for me. And so I just like was like, thanks for giving me the space to do this. Cause like, this is like, why do you have a business? You have a business so that you can have the freedom to have options. And for me, writing the books is something that I just derive tremendous joy from. And so it's selfish and I really like it. And so I do it. Even like there's a handful of big projects I should be pushing right now that I'm basically just saying until the book's done, I'm not going to be able to do it.
Have you ever tried efficiency tactics to, like, I guess if you enjoyed writing, then maybe you haven't, but something like dictating the book and then having somebody format it and like rewrite it in a more professional way or something? No?
I love writing.
Yeah.
I love writing. Yeah, I mean, some of the things that people don't know about me is like when I was in high school, I was the vice president editor of the newspaper. I was the editor in chief of the the literary magazine. I got a full ride to Tufts, which is a pretty good college here in the United States for writing. And they like the writing professor like wrote me a personal thing, was like, we love your writing, because I'd done tons of writing samples because I love to write. And so it's cool that, and I pretty much stopped after college, and I kind of refound it with the first book, which was Gym Launch Secrets, and then obviously $100 million offers and now $100 million leads, and I just really love it. So it would rob me of the joy, and I don't think when I see it in front of me, I think better. I process the information better, and I think I get more disciplined in my thinking when I write.
So does that apply for reading for you too, or do you listen to podcasts more, and how do you consume content? Or do you even consume content?
Yeah, reading's probably the biggest thing that I consume. I don't consume a lot of content, which makes me, like, a lot of times I feel like behind, because like I read, but like I don't read that much. And I watch videos from now and then, but like not a lot. I think a lot of my like progress has been trying to like think through problems and just solving them in the real world, and that's where I've learned the majority of my stuff.
Okay.
And like mentors and advisors for sure. That's helped me a ton. Like that's where I would say like I get a lot of my guidance from.
Right. Do you have like a certain cadence of meetings with them, or do you just hit them up when you have a problem? Okay.
Yeah, or just like, hey, let me bounce this off you. This is what I'm thinking about this deal structure. Here's kind of the variables. Like, give me your 2 cents on it.
Yeah. No, that seems in line with what I do too. So that seems to be the easiest way to make it happen. It's just unorganized on my end. I have like 57 different threads all over the place, unfortunately.
I think if you ask them to all join one, it might be just like, this is a requirement to work with Derek.
Yeah, maybe. So taxes and investing. I got to talk about this because I don't know if you're one of the first people to like lay out in clear, practical terms how individuals with high net worths take out loans against their assets and their portfolios. So for me, thinking, especially as somebody who has a corporate structure where a lot of my money gets tied up in the companies, and if I pay myself personally, I eat a shit ton on the taxation side of things. So oftentimes I'm looking at, ways to leverage debt to fuel the, whatever my lifestyle is, whatever bare minimum I need, against the assets and whatnot. But for me, I always wondered, because for you, I know that you're not planning on having on kids, right? Like you and Layla said, no kids, 100%.
I would say we are in the no kid camp. I'm not saying we're going to say anything forever, but like I don't think we'll have kids at current.
So if you're taking out loans against your assets and you've accumulated all of this debt by the time you die, and they're coming to collect on it, does that debt get deferred onto if you had kids, your kids or your family members, or is it simply that the collateral that you have put up to get that debt, they just pull it out of your company and you've essentially circumvented the tax structure entirely? Because I've heard differing answers where it's like, on the one hand, the idea is that when they call the debt, it's like, let's just say I have my wealth management portfolio and they're like, okay, you owe $3 million on all this debt you've accrued for your lifestyle. They go in and they pull it out of my company and I've essentially died and beat the tax system. Or is it that they go into my company that exists and then like take a chunk of equity out of it?
Yeah. So, okay. Couple things.
Yeah.
First, some disclaimers, and then I'll go into it. One,
Not tax advice.
Yeah, sure. This is not tax advice, number one. Number two, I did not make my money investing. I made my money in money. So I consider myself a very novice investor compared to, at least on the, like, my business to investing knowledge is far outweighed towards business than investing. So that's second.
Yep.
Third thing, in terms of what happens when we die. So most people, especially high net worth individuals, are going to have some sort of very big life insurance policy. So like when I die, there's a big nut that's going to go to Layla, or in the reverse, right? And that would more than cover any kind of debt, et cetera, that's happening, right? The next thing is that it depends on how the debt is being taken. So if you were doing an asset-backed loan, which is like a collateralized loan, then as long as you're continuing to make the minimum interest payments, which if the company that you're taking it against can make off the cash flow from that company can cover the minimum interest payments, and it's growing at a faster pace, then you indefinitely basically defer. And then I think that's more or less the goal. In a private company setting, so like for you, right, in a company that's not publicly traded or the asset would not be considered like liquid, you would have to go through a more formal process of getting or putting debt on the company, and especially if you want to take it as you know, like as personal stuff for you, you'd have to go through something called a dividend recapitalization of the business, and so that's the like big picture. If it's a publicly traded equity or it's a real estate asset, something that's a very well understood asset, then there are plenty of lenders who will lend off that because they can adequately value the risk of the asset. With a privately held company, you basically have to pay for all of them figuring out a custom debt solution for you given the asset that exists.
So for me, the way it works for me is I have a bunch of companies under me, and then I get dividends or distributions depending if it's a C-Corp or an LLC. I pay a corporate tax at my like holdco level, and then that company sits on a bunch of cash, and I either put it into a wealth management portfolio or redeploy it into new LLCs or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that wealth management portfolio is in the market and is being invested and is cash. It's not it's not personal after-tax cash, but it's corporate after-tax cash. So but that amount, I can get a personal loan against that amount within reason. So I'm thinking at a personal level to circumvent the corporate buttfuck that happens when I take the money out of the company, I can basically take loan against whatever my portfolio is to whatever extent I want, and get this debt accumulated. But then when I die, I don't know that they just one for one, like you owed $5 million at a personal level, so let's go into your company portfolio and take out $5 million, and that's satisfied. Like, I don't know that they don't charge a personal tax rate when it hits that barrier again. Do you know if that happens?
I don't know.
Oh, damn.
I don't know. I think it also depends on how the debt's structured. I think it's all going to depend on how, like, what type of loan you are getting and the terms of the loan.
Because I'm wondering how people justify doing this when they don't even know what happens when they die. Because I'm thinking, if you've taken out all this personal debt against your corporate funds, like even if the cash is there, like there's no guarantee that you're not getting hit with a personal tax at death. So if I owe $5 million, and let's just say there's $5 million in the wealth management portfolio and they take out 5 and that was all you had, does it get chopped in half and then your family owes 2.5 million or something? Like, I don't.
Well, to repay a debt, there wouldn't be a taxable event.
So you do circumvent the personal tax, even though it was.
You might have to pay the debt back, but
right.
But there wouldn't have been right. You would took tax against an asset.
Okay.
Canada may be different, but like in the United States, if you take a loan, like I've an asset worth $100,000 and I take a loan of $50,000 against that asset, and I have to pay $1,000 a year for that loan.
Yeah.
Then as long as I make the minimum interest payment, or someone is making the minimum interest payment, then that loan might never get called, and that's cool, great, good for them. And if it does get called, then it either gets paid through my life insurance policy because there's cash that happens there, and that could pay off the debt, and then the company's fine. Or if for some reason they did call it, then they could go grab the assets that they collateralized the loan with to begin with.
Right. So you would essentially be circumventing personal taxation at that point because you're using
Yeah.
collateralized liquid cash that was in the company to pay off personal debt without incurring tax. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
If I take my company public, if I take acquisition.com public, I can take a loan against my stock personally.
Right.
And they know that they can grab my stock from my thing whenever they want. That's how it works from a fundamental level.
And do you guys not do that at all? Like you just use...
I don't, and that was the last caveat. So I don't do any of it.
Yeah.
But that is how it works. I don't do that because that's just, again, I have tons of cash flow. You know what I mean? Like that's not my issue. I have very high cash flow companies. We have asset light companies. Like we are built to cash flow. I'm a very big proponent of Warren and Charlie in terms of school of investing. Like we're very much like we buy companies that make money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like we're not in the like let's see what someone will value this in the future as, or this could be really cool. Like we buy stuff that makes money and we can see the money today. And we have a reasonable expectation that it's going to continue based on XYZ factors. So I don't do that stuff. I don't do any really crazy tax things. I don't do any really crazy loan things. And now that everything just went to shit and probably will continue to go to shit for a little bit, I'm happy about that.
All right.
Because all of this other stuff, let's say I'd taken all these loans up to this point, I would be over leveraged and I wouldn't be able to do anything. And right now, everything's down 50%. Maybe it'll go down another 50%. And then overnight, I'll just take that cash and I'll just buy something and then I'll have quadrupled my money.
Right.
It's just like all these 10% things don't, like at least when I see how like the richest people made their money, they're looking for like 10x, 100x returns in games that they cannot lose. They're looking for the obvious play. Like Charlie's like, you should never have to do a calculation to figure out whether it's worth it. He's like, it should be obvious, right? Like this thing was trading at 10 million, it's worth 1 million now and nothing has changed about it. Okay, this is probably something worth buying today. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
To play devil's advocate to that, like you said that high net worth people do this to avoid tax, but then people who have high net worth probably wouldn't be concerning themselves with that to begin with. Is that only, so like, which individuals are...
Oh, there are absolutely people who obsess about tax stuff.
Right.
Absolutely. I am not one of them.
Right. Okay. So
and I think that basically, I don't think it is required to become high net worth to obsess about this stuff. And I think that many people will be better served not wasting 30% of their time trying to do all these things. Like I got a message after I made that tax video and somebody's like, I have a personal friend who's extremely wealthy and he counts his days of when he's in New York versus not in New York so that he can avoid the New York tax. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a miserable existence.
Dude, you gotta tell me about how many entrepreneurs you know who've gone to like Puerto Rico or like a tax-free place and how many of them regretted it versus didn't regret it? Do you know?
Well, I know personally a lot of them have come back.
Yeah. So
and I say this as somebody who, I moved to Puerto Rico.
Oh, you tried it?
I moved to Puerto Rico in 2017. I moved to Puerto Rico in 2017. To be fair, I was only there for 4 days because the hurricane came the next day and then we didn't go back. But yeah, I mean, I had a friend that that he went there and he did the whole thing. And I was like, and he was traveling back and forth to Florida every weekend. Every weekend he flew to Florida and back. So it was a flight, 2 flights a week, every week for the whole year so he could keep his thing. And I was like, do you think if you didn't have 100 flights a year, you would be able to make up the 30% that you're paying in taxes? And he was like, well, shit. And I was like, and you'd be able to just live where you want to live? Because like, this is the thing that Layla said. And I kind of get really hard on selling this piece because there's a part of me that just loves making more money. And I would prefer to pay fewer taxes. Like I would. But I think that her logic is sound, which is why have all the money in the world if you can't live where you want to live in the world? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the big picture, you know, at least for me. You know, the devil's advocate argument I would give to me is like, at what point does taxation become too much? If you were in an area that was 99% tax, and you really wanted to live there, would you say, oh, you have to make 100 times more? Well, I'd say like, how reasonable is it that I can make 99 times more than I can? And at what point does this materially affect how I live? Because then I wouldn't be as wealthy because I don't have all the money in the world. But like the difference between, you know, I think at this point paying 40%. Versus paying 4%, there's a 36% difference. You know, it's a 50% increase in your take home, which is material. But it's material in terms of the number, but is it material in terms of how it affects my life? And so the math that I did on this was, am I going to care if I die worth 10 billion or 15 billion?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do know that if I talk to my 85-year-old self, he'd be like, did you really spend your entire life where you didn't want to live because you wanted me to have $5 billion more dollars?
Yeah.
And then he looks at me like I'm an idiot. And so then I'm like, all right, got it. And so that's like how I play this out of my head.
So earlier we were talking about how acquisition.com is an LLC, and then you sort of made it sound like it might become a C-Corp. Is that something that's planned, or did I just like misinterpret that?
No, I'm looking at the structure of that. Apparently, I mean, I was told by a friend of mine that Warren Buffett espouses, which is like a combination of C-Corps that are structured through like an ESOP, which is a US thing for employee stock ownership plan. And ESOPs have some particular things where there's no taxes associated with the cash that you get from the loan for the ESOP. So I actually literally just sent it to my lawyers to take a look at.
Oh, okay.
But again, this might be another thing that I tell people not to look into. So.
Yeah.
But Warren does it. So the thing that hooks me was that Warren Buffett did it. So I was like, okay, he's legit in terms of like his ethics and the fact that he doesn't do shady stuff. And so I was like, okay, if there's no shadiness or there's no hair attached to it, like the trust thing that I was telling you about before, you know, I had to find 10 people that all had to represent, $5 million, and I have to like convince them to do this, then I can't touch the money, and then the IRS could unwind it. And I'm like, yeah, no. But this is like, if this is 100% letter of the law, if I can structure it in a certain way and it benefits the employees and we also don't have to be like, cool, I'm in.
So Berkshire Hathaway is a C-Corp, just to clarify, but it has this special employee thing?
I think they have a setup. I'm having her look into it. I don't want to speak on it because I clearly didn't know enough. That's why I sent it to her.
And this would circumvent the 21% C-Corp tax on any dividends you receive? Is that?
Yeah, there's thresholds and things like that, and there's holding periods. It's like after 5 years, the certain amounts of money. It's over $10 million. There's a whole thing to it.
What is it called?
But if you know you're going to hold for a long time, that's the big thing. Is if you know you're going to hold for more than 5 years, which we are, then that's what made it believable to me. Because I was like, if it's just like, oh, just move some papers around and then you don't pay, like that's too good to be true. I don't believe that. But like the U.S. the U.S. government incentivizing entrepreneurs to not sell and to grow corporate enterprises that make jobs and reinvest the money in the corporation, which goes into the economy, that makes sense to me to incentivize. Oh. So that's why I was like, look into this.
Wow. Yeah, this looks good. I'm just looking at it right now. Because I have a C-Corp and I paid 21% on all my dividends. And then personally, if I want to get that money in Canada, I have a withholding tax of 5% over the border. Then it gets into my holdco in Canada. And then I have to pay a personal tax too if I want to get it out. It's just like, it's fucking ridiculous.
You get double taxed here too. It's like 44 if you pay. If I took dividends from a C-Corp, they would be qualified dividends, but the net would still be 44. So it's better to do LLC if it's a flow through.
Right. Yeah. Like my impression.
This is not my specialty. This is just I pay this is like the HR question. Like, how do you set this up? I'm like, I pay people who are much better than me at it, and I ask them to do it.
Yeah. For me, the C-Corp, the idea of it was always sort of, I guess, enterprise value minded, where I figured I have enough to sit on where I can survive just fine. And I guess worst case scenario, I could always take out loans against my cash or assets. Sure. And then if you could retain all the money in your C-Corp, you can just redeploy it. And I assumed that was like at a high level what most of the top companies were doing, but never even heard of this.
Yeah, because what do you need the money for? You're not, because like there's nothing, I mean, you've got shelter, you've got clothing, you've got food, you've got transportation. Four big costs, right? And so like, if you know what you drive, you know where you live, you know what you eat, you know what you wear, what else are you going to spend the money on? Everything else you spend money on is to make more money.
Yeah.
It's like, what do these cost? And then everything else can stay in C-Corp to get redeployed to make more money. And then at that point, it's what? I can make more money so that I can make more money?
Yeah, exactly.
To do what? Because I already covered my big four.
Yeah. How much do you spend to maintain your current lifestyle?
I think about 50 grand a month.
Damn, dude. And is that because you have like a penthouse in Vegas right now that you're renting, or what is that?
That's with us like really actively trying to spend money. Like
Right.
I would say we live like assholes.
Okay.
And I say that, Caleb's cracking up in the background. But like, I mean, I'm just being real. Cause like at some point, I'm like, I just said it, like, these are the 4 things you can spend money on. Like what else you can spend? Like, and so it's, like we go out to eat, we probably spend $12,000 a month on food.
Okay.
Which is a lot. It's a lot of money, but we live in a place that has lots of good restaurants. And so we go out. On the flip side, I spend no time preparing food. We don't go grocery shopping, and we've never used our kitchen, not once. So lunch is delivered, and we go out for dinner. We do that every day, right? The only thing I have in the morning is I have a bar and a shake, and I do that every day. So I do a bar and a shake. I have a bunch of ground beef and sweet potato for lunch, and then I go out to dinner, and that's where I have my dessert, and I have everything else, right? The rent here, I think it's like 15 grand a month, whatever. And then I saved, 20 grand for miscellaneous, if Layla wants to buy a purse or whatever, Layla has expensive taste in clothing. I obviously have very expensive taste in clothing myself.
Dude, your flannels, I've heard, are pretty expensive.
They are pricey, but I mean, even if I have 10 of them, it's like 2 grand, and then what else do I do? But that's it, you know what I mean? So there's not a lot else that we spend money on, and that's when I started getting into it, where I was like, man, our passive distributions far outweigh even our active, so that's where I get into the whole, worldview stuff, because I was like, why am I even bothering to do this to begin with? And it's like, we're just making money to make more money, so that we can make more money to make more money to what? You know what I mean? To nothing. It's just to eventually disappear and go back into the system. So whatever. But we make more money because I enjoy the process of making money, and I love documenting it, which is why that's the mission of the company. And we spent a long time like, what's a mission we can get behind? I want to document and share the best practice of building world-class companies. Like I draw pictures of business, I write books about business, I make videos about business. Like all I think about is business. And when I go to dinner with somebody and they don't want to talk about business, I am really awkward. I have realized this.
Dude, my
super
friends
awkward.
too, in like mainly my business partners, we've become like increasingly more hermit to the point where I actually used to be like pride myself on my ability to kill it in interviews and be like socially fluent and whatnot. But I feel like even though I film videos for a living, I'm more increasingly socially awkward if it's not related to exactly what I want to talk about.
Yes, I think what it is, because I try to think a lot about it, because I've bombed a lot of first dinners with like new people. Layla will be like, "You said nothing." I was like, "I had nothing to add." But I think it's a signal to noise ratio. So it's like a lot of people will make noises, you know what I mean, with their. I'm using this with Dr. Cash, he's my coach, but he says people make noises with their face, but they don't say anything. And so it's like they have a high noise ratio, but like to me, there's very little signal, because it's just like they might be meaningful to someone else, and so I can appreciate that. It's just like for me, it's just not something I find interesting. And so I think part of why you got to where you are, and some people might say that we've accumulated some material success, is because like we just genuinely find this incredibly fascinating. And so I spend people are like, how do you stay so motivated? And I'm like, I don't feel motivated. I love doing this, and it's what I spend all my time doing anyways. And thank God you can make money doing business, because otherwise I'd still probably be doing business and not making money, because I like doing it.
Yeah. I want to circle back to your diet at very soon, because you mentioned how you kind of like break down your day. But from the entrepreneurship side, sort of like capping off, like productivity. Okay. Go. Yeah. So
Caleb asked if he could change batteries for 90 seconds. If we could just.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
No worries.
Sweet. We can just normal chit chat.
I don't know how to do that, bro. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't either. We can just stare at each other.
Yeah. What is I don't want to like burn through these questions though. I have a good one. So.
Well, I'll ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
So are you married?
No, just girlfriend.
Planning on?
Not anytime soon. No.
Fair. Kids? Yeah. Oh, we're good. We're good on batteries, so we're good to go. There you go. Disregard.
Kids probably not though, because, and it sounds absurd, but well, like for me, the ROI, and like it sounds so fucked up to talk about ROI when you're talking about like children or like pets or anything, but like even getting a dog, I don't even have time to feed myself, let alone like a fucking dog. So it's kind of like, for me, I'm just not at that point in my life where I can take a step back from anything because I'm so full board. So
yeah. I get it.
100%. What's your reason for no kids?
it doesn't fulfill a need for me right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'd be doing the kid a disservice right now too, because I just wouldn't be giving him the attention he needs, and it doesn't really fulfill me in any meaningful way at this point in my life right now.
Yeah, we're on the same page. And like the stuff that I'm doing is endlessly fascinating to me, and I don't think that like changing diapers or a 2-year-old would be as fascinating. A lot of people would be like, wait until you have your first kid, and I'm like, I get it. But I've also seen tons of guys who love their work and don't love their kids, so like I don't think I'm immune to that. And I also think that there's a very high likelihood that I don't know if I'd like the kid. I feel like I can be picky about the people I want to hang out with, and like even though I'm related to people in my life currently, I don't hang out with them because we don't have similar interests. And so, like if the kid really liked, painting or something, and there's nothing wrong with that, I just probably wouldn't find that fascinating.
It seems like the potential likelihood of the kid ending up something that skews away from what you generally had in mind is like what your dialed in focus is. It's so high that it's almost like the roll of the dice. Is it always worth it? I don't know.
And I'll give the one follow-up that I have, which is like when I think about it, because people are like, what about legacy? And you probably already know my views on it, which is just that I don't think legacy is real anyways. But like, if people are like, well, what about your future generations? I'm like, well, I'm somebody else's future generation. And so if you go far enough back, we're all related. And so it's like, well, then we already are all family and we're all distant cousins anyways. And so like, why don't I just help a super distant cousin of mine do stuff that they're walking towards me saying, dude, I love everything you do. Please help me do that. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I love talking to this stuff. And to people who like talking to this stuff, let's do that. And so it's like, rather than try and convince somebody to try and love what I love, just let the people who already like that stuff, who for whatever nature reasons have come forward, I'll just help those ones. And I feel like a kid probably takes 30 hours a week, 40, I don't know. In that same 40 hours a week for 20 years, I could probably help a lot of people. And if I think about it like that, that's where I have a hard time justifying. And you're like, what about, that's return on what? I'm like, I mean, it's return on whatever, Sorry, go ahead. What's the kids?
No, no worries. That's good to get some insight on that because I've been curious why you guys didn't want kids too. What is the most overrated piece of advice you hear in the, I don't know, I guess I want to make this relevant to me selfishly. So like in like the, I don't know, like your net worth area, what is the most overrated piece of advice?
I already know which one I'm going for. Okay. There's two. I gotta pick two. One of them's for Caleb. The other one's for me. So at least in the U.S., there's this like the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. Right? Like everyone retweets this as though it's fact, and it's just like it's so silly for a variety of reasons. First one is that the way someone gets somewhere is not how they end up. So Mark Cuban has a zillion different income streams, but he made his billion with one. And so it's like saying billionaires fly on private planes, so you should fly on private planes to be a billionaire. It's completely irrelevant what they're doing because what matters is how they got there. And that's why I think that quote is just such a farce. The other reason on a tactical level is that most people have a very difficult time staying focused, and it takes an inordinate amount of effort to be successful at anything. And to assume that you have so much talent that you can put 1/10 of your attention into 10 things and then somehow compete against somebody who's going all in on that one thing is just a huge ego thing, in my opinion. And it shows a lack of clarity, right? It's just like the whole idea of I'm going to do all these things and see which one works is so ridiculous because they'll all work, but not at the same time. And so you just have to pick one. And
you just end up doing 10 things like really shitty instead of one thing
100%. 100%. And it takes a very high skill set of knowing how to delegate, lead, manage, recruit, partner even, to be able to expand yourself. And I think that people would be like, well, Alex, you have 8 portfolio companies. It's like, yeah, but I didn't get here that way. And you're like, we've gotten to this point because we finally got those companies. And I've been very open about the fact that I think Gym Launch would have been bigger if I hadn't started Prestige Labs. Because I split my attention.
Yeah.
And it would have been bigger. I know it would have been bigger because there was priorities that I had. As soon as I started Prestige Labs, they stopped being initiatives, right? And I could have continued to grow that company, and I shouldn't have. It just seemed. It was the woman in the red dress. It was like she walked by, and I was like, man, an extra 20 million a year sounds awesome. Yeah. Right? But I could have just driven an extra 20 million years in the main thing, and I made the mistake by looking away, and I took my eye off the ball. It was a big mistake for me. It was one of my
it was when I was in the build-up stage of my supplement company and before my telemedicine company even started, I would see guys like Alex Becker and think to myself, I feel like I could do this like online course thing, and the amount of ROI he gets for his like these master classes, and you have like just a good click funnel set up, and the amount of conversions he gets relative to his input for it, it's so fucking, the margin is so extreme. The attractive like lady in the red dress or whatever, very, very hard to ignore. But I think ultimately ignoring it and building my businesses got me like exponentially further than I would have been otherwise overall. And I feel like a lot of those like how to make money online course guys, not necessarily Alex, because I think he has like a successful like
Becker's the man. Becker's awesome.
Yeah, that he has like high roast and like other stuff that's, you know, cool that he's doing. But like
Hyros is a $100 million company. I mean,
I've looked to see do you recommend, presumably you'd recommend them for like
I think they do a good job.
Okay. Because I've considered using them for Gorilla and some other stuff. They do a great job for
tracking. It depends on the type of business, but I mean, Alex is smart, man. People like, anybody who bets against Becker does not know how smart Becker is.
Yeah, I wonder how many of those make money online guys though that taught, you know, kind of like kept the secrets to themselves, sold like big high value like courses and whatnot, just wish they built enterprise value in like an actual brand instead of this like selling how they made it sort of thing at the end of the day.
Yeah. So think about, so obviously I'm in the space, so I've given this like a lot of thought. So the way that most people practice it is that they sacrifice enterprise value for today's cash value. So if they I would think about it like this. So it's like if in 5 years they could build a brand and not take a lot of money during those 5 years, and then maybe sell that brand for like $20 million versus make, you know, $2 million a year for the 10 years. A lot of people can't say no to that $2 million a year take home for that 5 year period. And now, is the amount of money that they're going to get at the end equivalent? Maybe. It depends on their skill set. You know what I mean? But the idea of doing the opportunity versus selling the opportunity is very interesting, because you can also, if you know how to build a brand, you can turn the selling of the opportunity into a brand, and then you get the best of both.
Right.
And that's basically what I'm trying to do with acquisition.com, is help people do that, because that's what I did. I lived that. You know what I mean? We took 43 million in distributions while we grew the company. And part of that is because I did the other way first. So I grew my chain of gyms. I just pushed everything back into more locations. And then when I realized, I learned more about business, I realized the opportunity vehicle was not ideal. And I had a mentor who was like, dude, you should be licensing this stuff. Like you should be helping other, like you shouldn't be signing these leases, doing these build out, like you shouldn't be doing all this stuff. And I took that to heart, and I basically fire sold those. And I would have had more money if I just kept my first location and just literally pocketed all the money for that period of time that I spent reinvesting. Yeah. Rather than basically emptying my pockets every single month into growth. And then at the end of it, I had nothing. I ended up making a terrible business decision after that and then losing what I sold the money for. Different conversation for another time. But like that was when, after I was sitting there at the bottom and I had no money after just basically giving up, you know, half a decade to the chain of gyms, I was like, I'm not going to do that again. I was like, whatever I do next, I'm going to make money while I grow it. And that was a huge priority for me. I was like, I'm not going to just keep wishing it's going to happen, because there's so many things that can disrupt a business. And so I'm a big advocate of taking at least, you know, decent distributions throughout the growth. And does that sacrifice long-term enterprise value? Maybe. But from an entrepreneur perspective, especially the guy who it's his only company, they are so over-indexed risk-wise that taking distributions is a way of hedging your risk.
Yeah, that's something I took to heart that you talked about, is making sure you're taking regular distributions. Because for a while, I was just thinking, I care so much about enterprise value, and I don't need this shit. I can just make the money off YouTube and like random stuff and not worry about, you know, distributions. I'll just reinvest it all and grow way faster. But there's a point where it's like, it's too aggressive, where you're not actually being mindful of like your own risk profile. See me.
Yeah, and you're skating too close to the knife's edge. And I'll say one more thing on this because this happens all the time. And this is just what I've seen from some of the companies that have applied and things like that. Is that if I ask an entrepreneur and I'm like, hey, are you taking distributions? They're like, no, I'm reinvesting everything in the business. And I say like, reinvesting in what? Like, what are you reinvesting in? Like, the term reinvesting in the business means that you are buying assets that are going to increase the company's value. So it means you're doing some sort of M&A, you're doing some sort of tuck-ins, roll-ins, whatever, of other companies or competitors, or you have capital expenses that are required to grow the business, which might mean I'm buying equipment, I'm expanding facilities, right? Those are capital expenses that would be investments to grow the business. I'm going to get a return on the capital. That is what the true meaning of reinvesting in the business is. The vast majority of the time, they say they are reinvesting in the business because they are just not making money. And so they assume that because they are not taking cash out of the business, they are reinvesting in it. When in reality, they are just not running a very good business. Because a very good business spits off cash. It spews money. That is what a good business feels like, right? And so unless they have a business that has a requirement that grows through capital, like anybody who's in the education space who says they're reinvesting in the business, I'm like, what are you reinvesting in? What asset are you buying that you're getting a return on through your business? Yeah. And usually they don't have an answer because they're not reinvesting in their business. They're just not that profitable.
Yeah. I wonder how many of those do that in order to show like an inflated revenue metric through like ROASs that are barely break even, just to show I made some huge amount of revenue to then sell their thing though to more people, which is a common tactic.
The guys like that are, oh yeah, it is. But I've yelled at some of those guys because I know some of them and been like, I'll tell you a story because I think it'll piss off somebody in the audience. So there was a guy that I know. He's still active today, and I knew that he was broke.
Yeah.
And he made an Instagram video that says, "Do you want to know how to be a millionaire in your 20s?" And so I screenshotted it and I texted it to him, and I said, "Do you know the definition of a millionaire?" And he was like, "Well, I've done $1 million in total sales." I was like, "Do you want me to repeat the question?" He was like, "No." I was like, "A millionaire means you have over $1 million in assets."
Yeah.
In exclusion of your primary residence. I was like, "Do you have that?" He was like, "Well, no." And I was like, "Then stop lying to yourself." And so he ended up taking the thing down. And I was just like, dude, like the thing is that as much as like everybody gets upset about, so think about this as from a logical perspective for everybody who's listening. If we're like, this guy's broke, right? This guy's broke and he's pretending like he made all this money. He's already broke. Why are we upset? He's broke.
Yeah.
He's lying about having money. Okay, well then he doesn't have money. Then what are we upset about? He doesn't have money. And the thing is until they learn the lesson, they're never going to get anywhere big. And by the time they do get somewhere big, they'll have learned the lesson and they won't be full of shit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get as upset about it because I just see it as they don't know any better. I don't see it as malicious intent.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you've run into quite a few of those scenarios through your ClickFunnels days and experiences, because a lot of those guys, like obviously there's good utility of this software for sure. Like it's an amazing platform, but there's a lot of people that use it who just like lie about their shit and sell like make money online courses that shouldn't be, I feel like, for sure.
Yeah, and the thing is and I have a lot of love for the industry because almost everything I've learned has been from that space. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so when I think about how much money I've spent in total for like the internet marketing courses and seminars and coaches and masterminds that I spent more on my four-year degree. And that didn't tell me nearly as much. And so if we really want to get real, I think the problem is in the expectations that are being set. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to teach somebody how to make money online, or teach someone how to make money using an ATM machine, or teach money how to have a marketing agency, or teach money how to become a videographer, or teach money how to become a better hairstylist. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the problem is that people think that if they buy one course, they now should be a master entrepreneur. And so it's like, how can you take 120 credits in college, which is 40 courses, just to get a basic degree and then somehow assume that you're going to become a master of entrepreneurship from one course? It's a messed up expectation that people have. And that's why they get upset. No one's upset that they pay $200,000 and they give 4 years of their lives and they can make the exact same amount of money as they could graduating from high school.
Yeah.
No one's upset about that. And it's because they don't set the expectation that way.
Yeah, when I realized what went into a successful company from a marketing aspect and how little my marketing degree actually was impactful of that and how irrelevant it actually was, I became pretty jaded of the whole post-secondary system, to be honest. So
Totally.
I definitely think there's a huge place for like high quality education in e-learning space for sure.
Totally. And how do you learn stuff? Apprenticeship. I mean, that's how they did it in the olden days. We just have tech that allows one person to be, many people to be an apprentice from one. The only difference is just tech has changed the way education works. And I think that the space has to catch up. It's so new. Like, formal education's been around for 100 years. Like, this has only been around for like 20, maybe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you can count the Dan Kennedy, the old direct response mail guy, so you can kind of count that. But like in the way that we kind of all consume it now with like modules and courses and videos and things like that, like, it's so new. And so like there will be, I mean, Gym Launch is an example. Like Gym Launch is going to grow to 250 million, like it will.
Yeah.
And I mean, as long as they execute on the things they need to do, but they have a very reasonable strategy of getting there. And so why isn't there an academy for gym owners? Like, are you expected to just like learn how to just run it? Like, where are you going to learn how to run a gym? The business of running a gym is no one teaches it, and they should. And so it's like, what does it look like? How would we structure it, and what expectations would we set if we were really trying to do it right? And that's what we're trying to do at acquisition.com. You know what I mean? And obviously, companies that we start working with, they're not perfect. Of course, they're not. But we've got years to build this brand and slowly get better and better and better, just like anything. And I think people have these crazy, unrealistic expectations of just other humans that they don't even apply to themselves.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think it will eventually get more in the direction of where people see the value in these sort of things relative to. Like when you actually just like compare and contrast your post-secondary education versus like a course, there's a huge delta, and like somehow people still will perceive it as rip-off, scammy, whatever, and somehow school is fine, even though how much practical information is there in the school part? Not a whole lot.
Dude, I was taking business courses from teachers and teachers' assistants that are making $5,000 a year. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with making $25,000 a year, but like if the whole point is to teach us how to like make more money.
Yeah. The entrepreneurship degree. The entrepreneurship degree I found the funniest of all. Right. I'm just like, why are you here if you're teaching entrepreneurship? Unless you're a retired entrepreneur, like Harvard, Stanford.
Sure. Some of those professors are G's, you know what I mean? And they really just want to give back, and like they're savages. Like they've had billion-dollar exits and they've done multiple. Like they're legit, you know what I mean? But the thing is I think there's just a huge amount that are underneath of that are just not, And I think, anyways, that horse is probably dead on the ground and just. But
I want to talk about your personal and professional life balance. So obviously, you and Layla, I'm assuming, have some sort of structure at this point, or maybe you don't. I don't know. For like how many hours are allocated to you wake up, do you have a morning routine, and then how do you schedule out things and date nights, or how's that look?
Yeah, we do the same thing pretty much every day. So we wake up, we have coffee, we work, we have lunch, we do meetings in the afternoons, we walk, we go out to dinner, we come home, we'll usually have more dessert, and then we usually watch an episode of a show, and we go to bed. And I do that basically every day. So
you have the same sleep schedule, and you wake up at like 4 a.m. at the same time, or whatever it is?
I wake up when I wake up. It usually is, like today I woke up at probably like 4:30, but 4:30 to 5:30 is when I wake up. I mean, whenever my REM cycle ends. I just wake up with my eyes open.
Okay, and then you get up, you go make a cup of coffee, and you sit there for, like, how long is it until you're actually working in your office?
Probably 45 minutes. Probably 45 minutes, Layla and I hang out. We have our coffee, we watch the sunrise, chit-chat about the day, chit-chat about whatever. And then we work. And I mean, the two biggest life hacks that I've had for being productive that I still do is, number one, I wake up early and I start working pretty much immediately. I still consider, I'm not transiting anywhere. I'm not getting ready. I mean, from the time my eyes are open to the time I'm working is probably 45 minutes. And I start early. So that's one. And the second one is that I just don't schedule anything before lunch. And we're pretty vigilant about that. Even with all the demands of time and all that stuff, I have until basically 12:30 every day that I don't take really any meetings. And that has, I think, those two things together have allowed me to, I mean, if I start working at 5:30 and I have until 12:30, I have a full work day, completely uninterrupted, every day before I do things like this, right? Like I did nothing before I talked to you today.
Do you have like a task
Not
list
nothing, I did.
from Melanie too for that 5 to 12:30 slot where it's like, you're going to work on your book for this, or you're going to film or whatever?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And it's also because the nature of my work compared to Layla's is different. Layla has far more tasks, and like she has a lot more like 10 to 60 minute tasks, and I have way more like 40-hour tasks. You know what I mean? So like if I need to create like an entire SOP. So I'll give you an example. So one of the things that I have to build right now is our database marketing system. So it's a system that we do with all of our portfolio companies, which basically creates compliant claims, allows us to track customer metrics and customer results at different intervals within the company, how we translate that into headlines and guarantees within the product, and how it translates into marketing messaging. And so like all of that kind of all works together. It's a big thing that I have to put together. You know what I mean? There's lots of assets. There's like, here's the surveys, here's how to interpret the surveys, here's how you translate them into headlines and guarantees, and here's what the compliance looks like, all that stuff, right? And so like, that's a big thing I have to do. Layla's tasks are typically not like that. Hers are more like, have 4 interviews with, you know, this role that we're looking at with one of the portfolio companies. So it's like they have a director of sales and she's going to interview their final candidates to make a recommendation, right? Yeah. So it's like, she has way more tasks than I do, and they're just as important. They're just different in nature.
And if you guys don't finish, like let's just say she's going through her bullet point list of tasks and she doesn't finish them by lunch or your meetings in the afternoon, do you just like chop them off in the middle, or do they carry through and sometimes you'll have a full work day where you work for like 12 hours? Or how's that typically play out?
No, they just start over the next day. You know, I mean, there's literally an endless supply of work. So, you know, and that's where I think prioritization is important. A lot of people just don't prioritize well. So they do lots of stuff, but they don't get anything done that moves the needle.
When do you film? Is it in that 8-hour block when you wake up?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, a lot of the stuff is repurposed, and Caleb's, you know, coming in and he's building his the media team out, you know, for this. Mostly because like I want to work on businesses more than I want to make like the specific videos, and I don't think it's sustainable. And so I didn't want to create an unsustainable. I didn't want to scale up to something that was unsustainable to then scale it back. So what I'm doing now is comfortable for me. This is like I make, you know, a handful of videos every few weeks, and I usually do them in one spray. I'll just sit down and I have a couple things top of mind. I'll make the videos, and those get spread out. And then we've got, you know, podcasts like this where they'll repurpose different chunks, and so that becomes content. It also becomes the clips, and so the vast majority of the short stuff is repurposed, and increasingly over time, more of the longer clips for like YouTube will be repurposed.
And when you sit down for videos, that's like once a week, you just like blast off and talk at the camera for like 4 hours, or like how do you structure that? Because you
probably have a much better process than I do.
Well, the fact that I think you've said somewhere that you do it once a week or something, which is like
or every other week, yeah.
And then you just make sure you have enough clips out of that to make, and then if you have like a long form presentation that you've done, or like I don't know, like you've been to an event or something that you can post. You'll post that, but it's kind of like whatever you've thought of over the last 2 weeks is important, and you just sit down, just fucking talk kind of thing. You don't have like somebody prompting questions for you or anything?
No, it is astonishingly low production. That's not a guise. It's not like some I'm trying to make it. It's really low production. I have I have this little pad in front of my computer that if I think of something that I think would be good, I write it down, and then when I have like 2 or 3 of them on the pad, I sit down and make the video that weekend. You know what I mean? And if I get to the video time and I'm not feeling one of them, I don't make it. And so if I sit down and I feel like making 4, I make 4. And if I feel like making 1, I make 1. Because like I know that if I don't feel like making the video, it's not going to be good. And so I don't want to waste the audience's time.
Do you review anything before it goes live? Ever?
Not really.
So you just let them clip it and just assume that it's like it's going to be whatever it is.
Because it's me direct to camera. Yeah, it's me direct to camera. So like, I feel confident. Like I will stand behind what I say.
Yeah.
Where I feel like people have to watch out is where if somebody's trying to take on their voice, that's something that I would have a lot of difficulty with. But anytime they want to take a transcript and then like post it as a caption or post it on LinkedIn or whatever, like. Those are my words. Like, cool. You know what I mean? As long as it's not taken out of context, which usually they're really good about. Then yeah, that's how we do it.
Do you do anything to get your headspace right for videos? Like listen to music, get pumped up? Like, do you do anything like that? No? Okay.
You're making me feel
sometimes just getting
my,
No, dude. But like sometimes if you've got to film and you have like a really dialed in schedule and it's like, this is my filming block and you're just like not feeling it. Sometimes there's things people will do to kind of like get their head in the right space. I wasn't sure if you had any of those.
If my head's not in the right space, I just do something that my head is in the right space for. So I'll say something that Layla and I are probably a little different about. Maybe we've converged a little bit, but like this is probably going to be against the discipline motivation manifesto like mantra that is predominant. But like people are like, you got to do stuff that you don't want to do. I don't do that a lot. I do the stuff that I want to do. And I just, if all of these things are high ROI, I just do the ones that I feel like doing. And if they're all high ROI, then it doesn't matter what order I do them in. It's like, today's a content day. I'm like, well, if I don't feel like making content, I feel like writing a book, then I'll write the book. And if the next day I was supposed to write the book and I feel like making content, I'll make content. They both get done. I just do them when I'm feeling it.
Okay.
I don't know. It's worked for me. I am not a rules guy. I do not like rules. And so I like having freedom. And so I try to apply that to as many places in my life as I can.
The one thing I can relate to a lot is recently you showed your little hallway cubby of an office. It's just like a dialed in fucking straight on. Yeah. You can't look to your left, you can't look to your right. It's just a wall. For me, over the years, the more I had windows, sound, anything, I can't even have my door open where it's like I know another room is like in the steppable vicinity of me. It just needs to be shut. So
100%.
I have a hard time with traveling even too, because if I go sit down at a table somewhere else that's not my office, it's very difficult. So for you, over the years,
this is a mobile work studio. So that's a table that has things in it, and it opens up and it has like a screen, so I can like have a portable desk. It's like, so I hear you, I feel you.
Yeah. Over the years, did you kind of like come up with certain strategies to shut things out more? Because I feel like, I don't know if I heard this, maybe I'm imagining it, but you said at times you even wore a hat to be like more like tunnel visioned in.
Sometimes some of the lore that comes out, I don't know where it comes from. No, I've never worn a hat to like stay more focused. I just wear it because it keeps my head hot. It keeps my head warm. And I like it because I like the logo and I like the hat. So
yeah. So like,
that's why I wear that.
Over the years, has your office just become like smaller and smaller and smaller to where you've like dialed in a certain, like you need to have a certain space the way it is, where it's like you're not going to get as much work done otherwise?
I like a big screen. That's what I like, having a big screen, and I like having a decent amount of desk space. That's about it. And I don't like having any distractions.
If you were overlooking Vegas with an office table right in front of the glass door or the glass window, would your productivity be like halved? Or
oh yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't know what the percentage would be. It would be less.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'm not.
Yeah. I also get distracted really easily. Like I mean, when we drink our coffee, sometimes I just won't say anything for like 30 minutes because I'm just staring at the cars. Like, you know, it's like watching fire. I just like stare at it. Nothing else to do. You know what I mean? So like I can't have. Some people can't. Like people tell me they're like, oh yeah, I work and like I just put jazz on or I put music on. Like I put earplugs in, and if I'm feeling really feisty, I'll put headphones on top of my earplugs. Like I need
no music
silence.
Though, ever?
No, no, God no. I can't think of. Then I'm just listening to music. I'm not even. I cannot do more than one thing.
So what about the phone? Do you leave it on airplane mode and like chuck it out of the room, or what do you do with it? Yeah.
Yeah. If I need to crank, I'll leave the phone outside the room.
Even if my phone's off and on airplane mode, just having it by me, distracting.
Yeah, for sure. And then you get the the compulsion to like check Instagram or check Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, have you found that harder to stay dialed in now that you kind of like, you're so involved with social right now to grow your platform, to then bring in these companies? Do you ever find yourself accidentally deviating too hard down the rabbit holes of social media when you're checking stuff? It's like, holy shit, I've been sitting on the toilet for 20 minutes now looking at Instagram.
That's funny. I think I'm actually okay at it. As much as I'd love to have like a damaging admission right now and just say like, you know what, I struggle with, like, I don't as much because I actually don't, I have to remind myself to do it. And I have to try. Like I have to try. Like I have to remember to put stories up. I have an alarm to respond to comments and stuff because otherwise I just won't.
That's not something your executive assistant could do if they know how to speak like you?
Yeah, that's the voice thing. I'd rather, no, I want the stuff. If it's going to be me, I'd rather respond to 5 people and have it be me than have 100% of people being responded to and it not be me.
You know what's wild is how Instagram doesn't have like an admin feature where you can just like assign admins. You have to like actually physically give people your profile. Like how is that not a thing yet? It makes no fucking sense. I don't get it.
There's a lot of things that don't make sense.
Yeah. Sleep, by the way, I don't want to forget, your sleep hygiene is like a militant schedule, go to bed at, what is it, like 8 or 9 or something? Like you're pretty rigorous about that, right? Yeah,
it used to be. We go to bed a little bit later now. We both noticed that we felt like we were getting better quality sleep going to bed a little later. So now we go to sleep around like 10. For the whole period of time that we were growing Gym Launch, we were asleep by 9. So we really just pushed it an hour. I would say both things have changed by an hour. So I used to wake up between like 3:30 and 4:30, and I used to go to bed, I would be asleep by 9ish, and now I'm asleep by 10ish, and I'm between 4:30 and 5:30.
Huh. So it's like 6.5 to 7.5 hours sleep. You don't feel like you need 8 to be top tier or anything?
I can't sleep 8. I would say I sleep 8 hours like once a month, and I feel like a newborn child. But most days I don't. Most days I wake up and this is going to sound really corny, but I wake up and I'm like really excited to start working. I'm like, oh god, I can't
no,
wait.
That's not corny at all.
I'm doing tomorrow. I'm like, oh, I can't wait. I'm like, I just finished the first 3 chapters. I can't wait to start chapter 4 today. Like I finally have like a good framework for what I want to hit on. Or we've got like that interview with like that new VP of Ops for a new company. I'm like, that's gonna be a good one. They have a really cool experience. I'm looking forward to talking to that person. Or we have this podcast. I was like, I'm really looking forward to meeting Derek, and I know you've done a lot of really cool stuff, and I was like, I'm just really looking forward to it. So it's just stuff like that.
It's funny.
I don't want to miss out.
Yeah. The paradoxical kind of like screw yourself situation that happens where what I know, like a lot of successful entrepreneurs who love what they do, you have a hard time even getting to sleep because you're so excited about the next day to get started. And then as a result, your sleep quality gets fucked up, and then it's harder to work well the next day. And it's just a vicious cycle that continues. Do you ever find that happens to you where it's like getting to sleep
I don't have any issues falling asleep.
Okay.
I've like try to keep my eyes open. I fall asleep real easy.
So one thing that I'm sure you've seen as much as I have is the absurd, exorbitant amounts of like biohacks that people in our space use to optimize everything. So like whether it's sleep, whether it's like whatever it is, like what are some of the ones that actually stood the test of time for you that you felt were impactful versus things that you tried that were just like stupid? Because like even when it comes to sleep, there are people that have like a chili pad on their bed. They have to have the temperature set a certain thing. Like some of these things I do get, but then some of them are like over the top for sure at a certain degree.
Yeah. So I think like, all right, so my big picture response to biohacking in general is that placebo is a very strong effect, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think 99% of biohacking benefits come from placebo. Hey, placebo effects are still effects. So like, more power to them. But I think where they go wrong is that they become superstitions. And so then they can't fall asleep without the chili pad. They can't fall asleep if it's not perfectly dark. They can't fall asleep unless it's silent, right? And that to me feels like a handicap. And then what happens is, just to have baseline sleep, you have to have 100 things in line, right? And so that's where I'd never want to be, which is why I'm a big fan of like there are no rules, which is like I don't have a strict bedtime. I go to bed when I'm when I'm tired, and I wake up when I'm not tired. And if I like, there was a day 2 weeks ago where I just felt out of it, and I got up, I worked for like 2 or 3 hours, and then I slept for another 4 hours after that. I just felt completely, and I went to bed that night. I don't know what it was. I don't know if I was sick. I have no idea. But I just I didn't feel productive at all. I was like, there's no point in me sitting in front of the computer. Like my brain's not working.
Yeah.
So biohacking in general though, I mean, I think that the things that people, there's like, is there a statistical significance and what's the effect size, right? Like, you know this stuff more than I do. I think the vast majority of effect sizes are irrelevant for just about everybody. And so it's just the big stuff, you know what I mean? And I think that it's the same thing with training. It's like progressive overload, do more stuff for a longer period of time, like eat enough protein and sleep, and do that.
Yep.
And do that for 20 years and you'll be big. You know what I mean? Like that's about it. And same thing, like, you know, with the sleep stuff, it's like, I do think that having a cool, dark room really helps. I think it helps. I think it helps you fall asleep faster. Do people in India fall asleep every day when it's 85 out and they don't have AC? Every fucking day. And you know what? They wake up and they get to work. Yep. And so how important is it? I don't know. There's people there who live a very long time and they do just fine. So I think a lot of us have just like gotten pampered and gotten really weak. And that's always been like my biggest fear, was just getting soft. And that's why I just try not to like believe in too many of these superstitions. Even if they worked, how much do I care?
Do you do sauna or cold plunge or any of that stuff? No?
I am a 1 cup of coffee in the morning type of guy.
No cold showers, bro? What are you doing?
Yeah, no red light sauna. I don't even know how I function. You know what I mean? Like, how do I do it without if I don't get my cold plunge in, I can't talk to anybody. You know?
Yeah.
I was on this podcast recently that I just really bombed. And it was because I think the founder and I kind of disagreed, because he was like, man, if I don't work out, I just, I have a horrible day. And I was like, I don't have that experience at all. I was like, I have more energy when I don't work out.
Dude, I wanted to talk to you about that too. As an entrepreneur, like the ROI on lifting hard, especially to failure, and the effect it has on fatigue for, like, I find days I don't work out better for productivity, personally.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. I mean, if I train hard, I'm exhausted.
I'm fucked.
My CNS is shot. Yeah. Like, I'm good on for like interviews and meetings, because I'm like way more mellow, but I'm not like, man, I want to go do this stuff. I'm like, I'm dead.
Yeah, if I do leg day, I don't feel good. No. Yeah, no. I'm not like stoked to work. I'm like, fuck me, I want to die.
Yeah, I eat a bunch of pancakes, and then I'm like, I could take another 2-hour nap.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't know. I always wondered that, like when guys are like, oh, I don't feel good if I don't exercise. I'm like, are you going for a run and getting like sun, or like what is your workout? Because like for me, I'm like, if I'm going to failure in the gym, I'm getting home and I'm like, my brain is at least like 50% capacity what it was before I went to the gym. So
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also like, how hard do they train? And you know what? And like, I don't want to look at somebody and be like, I don't think you train that hard. I don't want to say that, because like, how's that going to make a friend? Probably not. So I just say like, okay, I guess that works for you. Cool. And that's not me saying that about that guy. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah. How do you time your workouts being mindful of that? Because like for me, like my gym I go to, it's less busy if I go earlier in the day, but at the same time, if I go and do legs at like, I don't know, noon, I know that my brain is going to be, especially my post-workout meal too, the amount of like carb fatigue I might get when I'm like slamming, all my post-workout nutrition, and then sitting back down and trying to be mentally sharp, as if I'm like, if I could compare like fasting with coffee versus legs and post-workout meal and trying to do the same thing, magnitude difference of work quality. So like, how do you play that into your schedule?
I mean, real talk, I don't train that much. I'm in a season right now, because I'm building acquisition.com, that I'm not training nearly as frequently. So I was actually we actually did a collaboration with Stan Efferding. Do you know him?
Oh, yeah, he's sponsored by Merrick Health.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, Stan and I trained over the weekend, and I was talking about how I was like, yeah, man, I'm just probably training once or twice a week right now. And he was like, dude, enjoy the fruits of your labor. He's like, you just stay jacked because you already put the work in. Yeah. And it was kind of interesting, because I thought about this, and it was kind of like having passive income, because like we've already built the asset of muscle, and there's still work that has to be done, but it's just much less work to maintain it. And so it's like there's a little bit of work that you have to maintain the passive income. So this is like a passive body for me. I'm passively jacked right now.
Yeah.
When I was actively jacked, I was bigger. I was 250 at my biggest.
What are you now?
I'm like 218. I'm like 30 pounds less.
How tall are
and
you?
this is me like just under 6, like a hair under 6.
Okay. 250,
Yeah,
pretty
so-
hefty still at 6. Fuck.
Oh, I mean, I was big.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was pretty big. Yeah, I was strong as hell. It was great. But you know, but like that was a season for me. That was like gym launch, and I was gym lords is the community, so I had to look like a gym lord. And I wanted to be the biggest, baddest motherfucker there, and so I trained like it. I mean, like my hips were killing me. I had all these little bumps and bruises. You know what I'm saying? Little itty bitty micro tears everywhere, and it was fine. You know what I mean? I'm good with it. It was a season, but like. I don't see myself getting much bigger than I am now. If I train hard for like 10 days, I'll be at 230.
Yeah.
But this is just not my priority. And the thing is I'm sure you know, like the bigger I am, the more stress it's going to put on my organs and my heart. And I'd rather live longer. And so this is me. This is my passive body.
Did you have sleep apnea at all when you got to 250?
Probably. I mean, I got 2 nose operations, so I snore less now. Apparently, yeah.
Yeah. I have to use a CPAP machine because my neck just like.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, but massively impactful on sleep quality though. If you like, Efforting talks about CPAP all the time too. It's like a huge needle mover. We got to talk about though your 35 pounds in 6 weeks video. I just put in the chat. I don't know if you can see it.
I had a roommate, his name was Greg Knuckles. He's really big in the strength space.
An amazing name.
He's one of the 2 smartest people that I've ever met, but also stupid strong. Anyways, he was like, I read this research paper. What if we had you lift 6 times a day, but for like 10 minutes each time? And I was like, cool. So I set a timer, and every 45 minutes, I would go and do 1 set on 3 exercises, then I'd go back to work. I did that, and that's when I gained just a tremendous amount of weight. Coupled that with another thing that he had done research on, which was like a pure carbohydrate diet with no fat. And so basically the efficiency of fat conversion to fat that's stored is almost 100%. The efficiency of carbohydrate storage into fat is lower. So the idea was like I had 200 grams of protein and like 800 grams of carbs and basically 0 fat.
Yeah, I saw what you were eating. It looked like it'd be awesome for a day.
It was
and then horrible after that.
Horrible. And like it was not sustainable. But I put a ton of weight on and I put a ton of strength. From there, what I did was I dialed back the total volume, but I kept the split.
You talked about every 45 minutes.
That was natural.
That was natural.
100%. That was
Dude,
natural.
That
I'm
looks
on
like
TRT now.
Okay, so in this video, the picture though, it looks like the peak I've ever seen your physique. Like that.
I wasn't as lean. The peak, I mean.
So is this picture
I could show you a peak physique. Let me see. I'll look at it real quick.
Okay. Because maybe this is just your editor putting this picture up and they don't actually.
Oh, no, that wasn't. No, that was after I started TRT. Sorry. There's another one where I did. So 2 things. So I did gain 35 pounds in 16 weeks. Sorry, I gained 35 pounds in 6 weeks. That was 100% natural. That was when I owned my gyms.
Right.
That was the one where I did for every 45 minutes. That was that one. So the big article on muscle and fitness, that was that one.
So these pictures, you can see how people are finding it misleading. If you look at the comment sections, it's all like.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure the video guys just grabbed it from like more recent stuff. Okay. Now I want to show you, because actually if you Google Alex Hormozi 35 pounds, the article that comes up on Muscle and Fitness is the actual before and after for the 35 pounds.
Okay,
I was showing Caleb a video of me doing, I think it was like 450 for like, I want to say like 15 or 20. I don't know. It was a lot. And I was squatting 405 for 20. I had just about a 400-pound bench, and that was all natural. Those are my natural numbers.
Okay, how old are you here? This is 2015.
I was 2015. I was 25 or 26.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'll put up the picture so people know which was which, because obviously everyone who saw that video, and it's gotten some steam, and I got tagged a shit ton in it because everyone's like, Derek, you got to check this out. But yeah, it's you know,
I mean, but that's still really impressive before and after.
For sure.
That was 6 weeks. That was 6 weeks.
And this, I think, speaks to why you look the way you do on TRT as well. Because obviously a lot of guys on gear don't even look like they're on gear because they don't have the baseline, you know, foundational infrastructure, or their genetics just aren't as good. But like, if you
I trained for 16 years,
Yeah.
like before I went on TRT.
So as far as like you hitting your peak mass and like peak everything, like why did you get on TRT, and when did you start, and like why did you do it to begin with?
So this is when I got, I don't know if you can see it. So that was when I was 250.
It's from 3D delts, bro. Jesus.
Yeah, and this was 16 weeks earlier.
Jesus.
But this was actually a 2-year process that I did with Dr. Trevor Kashey. Have you heard of Dr. Kashey?
Yeah, my business partner at Merrick speaks very highly of him.
Yeah, I mean Trevor's a absolute off the charts genius, way out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so only reason I even did TRT was because he was like, I will oversee it. I was like, okay, cool. And so I was always really, really, really nervous to, you know, put anything in my body, which is why, you know, I didn't want to do anything. But then I got my testosterone checked twice. So actually, this might be interesting. So after I did that big 35-pound jump, I got my testosterone checked. So I was 25 years old, so that's supposed to be peak testosterone. I did it in the morning after I trained. So like everything should have been 100% aligned. And my testosterone at that point, and that was after bulking, overfeeding, sleeping 10 hours, like everything I possibly could, it was 270. And Trevor, when I told him about this, he's like, oh, you don't have low testosterone. He's like, you're just incredibly receptive to testosterone. He's like, so you don't need much. He's like, these ranges are completely arbitrary. He's like, you know, you could, and I looked the way I looked there and was doing the numbers that I just told you with 270 as my, you know, my testosterone levels. And then fast forward to 2018 or 2019, I can't remember what year it was. I think it was 2019. Fast forward to 2019, I did my blood levels again for like insurance or something. I can't remember what it was. And they tested it, and I was like 74. It was super low, and I'm sure it was stress and whatever. And they were like almost were in shock. I was like, no, my last one was really low too, and that makes sense. And so, anyways, they gave me TRT, and Trevor's just been overseeing it since, and I just stay in the normal range. If I have my druthers, I'd prefer to live a long time, and so that's where I'm at with it. This was a cool experiment for me. It was fun. I got to like see what I will say this is like there definitely was a look that I wanted to achieve that I spent 16 years trying to get naturally that I was able to achieve. And I now, like some people have this thing where like they get to a certain size, they're like, I want to keep getting bigger. I got to there and I was like, I'm good. Like this is fine. You know what I mean? And I'm content how I look now. And I will probably lose a pound a year between now and when I'm 50. I'll just probably just slowly lose a pound a year, and I'll be a tight 195. You know, when I'm older, and I think it's natural, and I'm good with it. It was a season. It's just like it's so funny because like right now, people see the way I look and probably see the way you look, and like they assume that fit. I mean, I get comments probably like you do, like at the airport, people are like, "Oh, I'm guessing you're going to the gym." I'm like, no. Not. I'm actually not going to the gym. As a matter of fact,
I actually barely fucking train, just so you know.
Yeah. I actually barely train at all. But there was a point I was going to make. It's all good.
It's like now your current diet, like you said you were looking to lose a pound a year. You're mindful of health. You're trying to downsize, etc. But
I've been doing it for 20 years. That's what I was gonna say. I was like, I've been doing it 20 years. Like most people who are like into fitness, like they're still in their first 5 years. They're like really into it. And I'm like, dude, well then give it another 5, and then give it another 5, and then give it 2 more, and then that is when I decided to pit.
Right.
You know what I mean? I put 17 years in.
Yeah. Your current diet to sustain and kind of like hit your, like obviously you have very low baseline requirements for sustaining because you put the work in, you've built up that bank of like muscle tissue essentially, and you can kind of just cruise a little bit. What is your current diet? Is it like you still try to hit your 200 grams of protein per day and then you just like backfill with whatever you want and dessert and like dinner or whatever that ends up being sort of thing?
100%. That's all I do. I have my 200 grams of protein, and then I just backfill my calories with whatever I feel like.
What are your primary protein sources?
I do that bar and the shake in the morning. I have the beef and the steak for lunch, and then so my breakfast and my lunch are always the same. Like they're always the same. And I usually knock down like 150 by lunch. So that when I go to dinner, I don't have to like think about anything, and I can just eat whatever.
When do you said a bar and a shake or meal one? That's like a protein bar and like 2 scoops of whey protein or something?
Yeah, like a 30 gram shake. I use the pre-made, like the box ones that are like $1. I just do that. It's easy.
And you do that during your like 4:30, 5 a.m. to 12 p.m. window before lunch? Just in the middle of it?
Yeah, I do it at like 9 to 10, somewhere in there. Usually when I get hungry.
And then noon, you said steak? Like what, 8 ounce, 12 ounce, 16 ounce?
Yeah, usually 12 ounces or 16 ounces of some sort of meat. It's usually either ground beef or it's steak.
Anything with that? What'd you say you had with it? Or?
Ketchup.
Okay. No like potatoes or anything? Nothing?
I said sweet potato. Yeah, I'll have sweet potatoes, like a sweet potato mash.
Okay. I knew you said something. I couldn't remember what it was. And then your dinner is like whatever you and Layla feel like eating, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we go out every night, and I usually have a meat and a carb and a bunch of bread and appetizers and dessert, and I do that all the time, and that's fun. That's like what we do. It's like we enjoy that, and I don't even say that I'm a foodie. It's just I have low ROI on tons of food during the day because I feel like I get more lethargic if I do that. So I prefer to eat never. If I could just not eat at all, I would do that.
That's why I was surprised that you gauging the ROI on this massive bulk is like, I feel no different. I'm like, but like my brain would be fucked trying to do that much food.
It was spaced out more though. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like these huge bowls. I mean, I was just eating all the time. You know what I mean? And I think that like, it's if right now, because you and I are probably more sensitive, like if I were to eat a big thing now like that, I would be destroyed. But if I did it every day, either I become unaware of the fact that I was lethargic, or I got used to it. Whatever it was, it wasn't. We still made money. The company still grew.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk to you about in regards to drugs, and this will be the last topic, is smart drugs. So this is something that is heavily abused in the entrepreneurial space. Guys who are on shit tons of Adderall, modafinil, a bunch of different medications, supplements, etc. What has your experience been like, if any, with smart drugs, nootropics, stuff like that?
Yeah. I'm chewing Nicorette right now.
Okay. So
I'm definitely a stimulants guy. We drink a cup of coffee every day, so I have that. Trevor wrote me like a stimulant cycle when I was like in this period of time where I was like, I have to work so much. But the thing is, like, I usually, like, if I get to a point where I feel like I have to work like that, it's usually because like something's wrong. Like I don't need to push harder. I need to pull back and see why I have to work this hard. And so in some ways, it's almost like a leading indicator of me needing to delegate or push something. And so that's what it's become. When I was like younger and thought I had to push through everything, I was like, I just got to grit down, like, do the boring work, like shit's got to get done. And I think there's a season for that, but like, I don't need to work like that. And it's not because like I can't, it's because it's silly. Like there's more work to be done than I can possibly do, which means I have to have other people to help me. And so why don't I just find the other people to help me and skip that and just move straight to the next point of leverage? So anyways, all that to say, he taught me the concept of rotating stimulants. And so I try not to do, besides the cup of coffee, which almost has more like, it's great time for Layla and I. That's the only thing that I take every day. I chew Nicorette when I feel like it. I've done nicotine patches, which I actually really like a lot. Like you're gonna quit smoking patches. Those honestly feel like Adderall. Highly recommend. Like love those.
I don't think a lot of people realize how neuroprotective and actual cognitive enhancing nicotine can be if you're not an addictive personality. Like if you're not going to get hooked on it brutally to the point where you abuse it, like people who, as ridiculous as it sounds, people get less Alzheimer's occurrence when they smoke.
Oh yeah. It promotes angiogenesis.
Yeah.
And I have a ton of Alzheimer's in my family. Oh. And so that's why I've been like, promotes short-term memory, decreases appetite, increases energy, has a 30-minute half-life, like prevents Alzheimer's. I'm like, I'm in. You know what I mean? Like, sign me up. So yeah, so big fan of nicotine. I also like, if we travel, I'll like forget to chew. Like I don't. Trevor told me, and so I believed him, that nicotine on its own is not addictive. He said activities that you associate with nicotine are addictive. And so like smoking is addictive.
Right.
He said nicotine is not addictive. Which of course, I can't even make a TikTok about that because they would ban me off the platform, which they did. They took the TikTok down. They said I was promoting drugs or something. But yeah, so anyways, so I did that. I still chew nicotine. Hey, this is not health advice, whatever. But at least from everything that I've looked at, it doesn't seem like there's any cancer. Like if you just chew Nicorette or just put the patches on, it doesn't do anything. So those two. Earlier on in my like entrepreneurial career, like I took Adderall probably like twice a month. You know what I mean? And I would take really, really small amounts because I think I'm very sensitive to stimulants. So I would probably take like 5 to 8 milligrams, which is like not a lot. But that was enough for me. And maybe it was all placebo. I have no idea. But that was enough for me. But caffeine and nicotine were the main ones. I've taken modafinil. The thing that I don't like about that in Adderall is the half-life so long. And so I feel like I end up giving the next day to have the productive day.
And then you end up using it the next day potentially to make up for the fact that your sleep was shit.
I've never done multiple days in a row.
But a lot of people do get into that vicious cycle.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, I've never done that. But yes, it was always like always like a once a month, twice a month thing, and it was usually Adderall, not modafinil. I've tried modafinil, but I preferred Adderall. But the fact that the nicotine patch plus Nicorette plus drinking a coffee is, and I actually prefer Red Bull to coffee for like actually feeling. I don't know if that's the B vitamins or whatever, but like if I do 120 milligrams of caffeine versus 120 milligram caffeine Red Bull, I feel it way more than
the format is definitely impactful because like even those like caffeine tablets you would get at Walmart or something, you take a 200 milligram, doesn't even feel close to the same as like 100 milligrams from an energy drink or coffee sometimes. Like it's or from the pre-workout versus a tablet versus this, wildly different feelings, even though the milligram amount might be equal. It's really interesting how it works out.
That's something I don't know anything about. I just know that I feel much different on that. So like if I have a big work day, I won't do all those things. I'll do like Red Bull once a week because like the concept of cycling has stuck with me because it's like if you're gonna get used to it, then you don't get the benefit. So it's like I want to use it. I don't want it to use me. So I'd have a Red Bull once a week probably now. And I just ordered patches yesterday. I haven't used them in like a year or two, but I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about these. So I'll probably use a patch as another thing that I'll do because I'm really trying to finish my book. And so I'll probably have more stretches of like intense attention. But yeah, that's my, that's
on like a peak nicotine day, like the most you'd use, how many milligrams in general?
I chew the 4 milligrams, and I've had 3 today.
Okay. And what about
like 2 to 3 a day is probably.
Yeah.
Usually I'll pop one in. It's usually like when I basically pop the same piece in, and then when I have to like eat or drink something is when I would like switch it. So it's like I drink coffee and then I'll pop one in, and then I'll have my snack and I'll pop one in, and then I'll eat lunch and I'll pop one in, and then that's it. So it's usually like 2 or 3 a day.
Okay. And as far as supplements,
I just like having it. I like having it just like I just
chilling.
Like plop it into my life. Yeah, exactly.
Got it. As far as like neuroprotective nootropics for Alzheimer's, do you do anything from like alpha GPC or anything from that side of things to support you? No?
I don't take anything.
Okay.
It's mostly because I don't take a lot of supplements because I don't remember.
Right.
Like I mean, I told you,
less shit
I'm
to
still
remember, the better. Frankly,
I'm like 3 days late on my pin right now. So like, you know what I mean? Like I barely, and that's like I have to do that. I can't remember to do that. So I've been, I mean, this I put next to my desk so I have that right there, and I have my coffee in the morning, and that's about it. We've kept it pretty simple. I don't, cold plunge and outdoor walk and red light sauna and singing songs and affirmations, and that's very hard for me.
No, yeah, I feel like some of that stuff, when you get too in your head about it, it's like almost overwhelming the routine you develop to be an entrepreneur, and it's just overkill, and you'd be better off.
I had a young entrepreneur reach out to me. He said, hey man, I'm really struggling. He said, I'm doing something that my mentor told me to do. And he told me, and so he said, my whole morning routine takes me 3 hours And he basically did that whole checklist. He's like, I walk outside barefoot 30 minutes so I can like center myself, and then I do the red light sauna, and I do float tank, and then I do like all this stuff, right? He's like, and it's just like, it's killing my day. He's like, by the time I start, it's like, 11 a.m. And he's like, because he also needs me to sleep this amount of hours and all this stuff. And I was like, dude, sometimes the work just needs doing, man. Yeah. like everyone, I think a lot of this stuff is productive procrastination, or people think it's productive procrastination, but it's just another form of procrastination. They feel like, it's like watching TED Talks. It's like you feel like you learned something, but like you're not making more money. Like you got to make 200 dials. Whatever way you want to do that, go for it. You know what I mean? But for me, like the longer I'm putting it off, the longer I feel like I'm guilty about not doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think I could talk with you for hours about shit, but I'm glad you stayed. Thank you for staying 3 hours. That was a shit ton of valuable insight, I feel like, for everyone in the audience and for myself included. And as far as where to find Alex, you're on @Hormozi on most Instagram, on the social platforms, Instagram, TikTok, etc.
I think if you type in my name, you'll probably find it. But @Hormozi is the Instagram one. I think TikTok is @Hormozi, and then Twitter is @Alex Hormozi.
Okay.
Because people claim my name before I could even get on the darn platforms.
That was something I wish I had the foresight on, is scooping up usernames. Yeah. But anyways, so go check out Alex on all the socials, and if you are a business who's doing 3 million in revenue or more, and you fit the criteria that he has, discussed and whatnot, check out acquisition.com and check out his other podcasts. Like, there's a lot of stuff I totally skimmed over from like the grind to get to where he's at that is hugely impactful for new entrepreneurs, and I definitely recommend you guys check it out, and appreciate having you on, man.
It's called The
Thanks
Game.
for coming. Yeah.
You bet. And if it's called The Game, you could probably just type my name in iTunes, it'll come up, or Spotify, or wherever it is that you consume audio content.
Oh, for your podcast too, right?
Yeah, if they're into that.
Awesome.
Dude, appreciate you, Derek. Thanks so much for taking the time. Thank you to the audience. I hope you guys found value from this. It means the world to me that if you're listening to this right now and you tuned in, thank you.